In 1991, somewhere in the lush jungles of central Vietnam, a local logger found a mysterious hole among the foliage and bushes. He looked in there and felt a strong wind blowing into his face. Then he heard a strange sound from the cave depths and realized that it was the sound of a river. The logger didn't check the cave, but decided to go back there with a flashlight and a rope. When he returned, he couldn't find the cave anywhere. He spent a few years searching for it. Finally, in the 2000s, the logger managed to locate it again. In 2009, he brought scientists to this place. They found out the cave, called Sundong, is the largest in the world. There's so much space here that you'll hear a long echo if you shout. Sundong's main passage reaches 660 feet in height in some places, which is more than half as tall as the Empire State Building. The area of the cave is so huge that an entire New York City block with 40-story skyscrapers would fit in there. There's a deep underground labyrinth under the jungles of Vietnam, hiding 3 of the largest caves in the world, and Sundong is number 1 on this list. The vast space inside is filled with various plants, unique microclimates, and different landscapes. There's a real jungle growing underground. It became possible thanks to the collapsed ceiling in some places. It lets sunlight penetrate there from above. There are huge stalactites 250 feet high on the ceilings and walls, which is more than the length of a passenger Boeing. They've been here between hundreds of thousands and millions of years. Some limestone deposits are more than 450 million years old. It means they've existed since the time long before the dinosaurs. Besides the jungle, there are also many rivers in the cave. They were formed because of rainwater coming down from holes in the ceiling. These rivers are smooth and fast, like slides in a water park. But riding them isn't the best idea, since they can carry you into one of those long labyrinths that the cave is full of. And we still don't know where they're going. You may find yourself in another unknown part of the cave. This is what happened in 2018. 3 divers accidentally discovered new areas in Sundong. The cave turned out to be much bigger than everyone thought. They dove into one of the cave's lakes and reached a depth of 256 feet. At the bottom, they found a separate tunnel. Divers lowered a fishing line with a lead weight there and found out that this place reaches a depth of 394 feet, and the tunnel is more than half a mile long. We still don't know the exact size of the tunnel. Sundong also connects to another huge cave. There are lots of things you can see in Sundong besides underground labyrinths and rivers. You can find spacious rooms with lakes, and you can walk for hours along dark mountain corridors. This place is strikingly beautiful, but dangerous at the same time. And the coolest thing is that you can take a walk here. Since 2013, Sundong Cave has been open to tourists. It's not just an easy walk to take some selfies though. The expedition to the cave lasts for several days. For the first day and a half, you'll explore the 3rd largest cave in the world. And only after that, you'll reach Sundong. The path will take you through rivers, dense jungles, mountains, and rocks. You can meet many exotic birds, monkeys, and other animals. And according to many people, the way to the cave is even more impressive than the cave itself. When you reach your destination, you'll spend the next few days exploring Sundong. Together with other tourists, professional guides, and porters, you'll be sleeping in tents in different places in the cave every day. You'll see some stunning landscapes and, get ready for this, 400-million-year-old majestic fossils. There are also dark rooms with lakes that are good for swimming. Such adventurous expeditions become more popular every year. People who visited the cave call it the most amazing place they've ever seen. Another amazing cave is located in Indonesia, on the island of Flores. It's quite small, but holds amazing things inside. In 2003, a group of scientists discovered ancient artifacts here, including fossils of primitive tools, such as sharpened stones. Scientists realized that hundreds of thousands of years ago, this place was home to our distant ancestors. Then they found a very unusual female skeleton. That woman was only 3.5 feet tall. This is the height of the waistline of an average adult person. That woman had no problems with her spine or with the development of her bones, though. This and other skeletons found in the cave belong to some unknown human ancestors. Scientists called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply, Hobbit. The woman's weight was about 35 to 79 pounds. Analysis of the skull and bones showed she was about 30 years old. Hobbits probably lived on Earth between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. There's a chance they met the ancestors of modern humans. The next cave is in Turkey. Imagine that you live in an old house and decide to make some repairs. You throw all the old stuff out of the rooms. The last place to sort out is your basement. You've hardly ever visited it and have no idea what's hidden there. But it's pretty spacious, so you decide to turn it into a room. You tear down the wall and discover the entrance to the cave. This is a tunnel that leads underground. You walk through the cave and see a real underground city. This happened in Turkey in 1963. One of the locals discovered a secret passage to a lost city in his basement. About 20,000 people could live there. There was enough space for livestock and food supplies. It's not just a maze of tunnels. There's a chapel, a school, stables, kitchens, walls, and other signs of civilization. The city was built in the Byzantine era, in the years 780 through 1180. It's not the only one down there and is connected to many underground tunnels and towns that stretch for several miles. Let's finish our journey in the strangest and most frightening cave. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can find a hole. This is a tunnel leading deep underground. The air inside the cave has high levels of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. Under normal conditions, the air we breathe contains around 20% oxygen, but it's only 10% here. You won't be able to breathe freely without an oxygen tank. The water and air here are poisoned. Almost no animals are able to live in such conditions, at least the ones we know about. And this cave is filled with 48 species of living organisms, 33 of which are new unknown species. Creeping things that live here can scare you, especially if you're afraid of bugs. Strange white snails and white spiders are crawling along the walls. An unknown species of leeches and transparent shrimp are swimming in the water. White millipedes with huge mustaches are creeping on the ground. Here you can also meet an unknown kind of scorpion with a transparent white body that doesn't look like any other kind of scorpion. Nothing here looks like ordinary animals at all. All creatures in the cave are white or transparent. They don't have eyes, but they have long paws and antennae whiskers that help to navigate in space. Plants can't live here without sunlight and clean air. This means that oxygen isn't produced in this place. So how do these creatures manage to survive? The answer is in the water. The surface of the lake and puddles here is covered with strangely moving foam. This substance is a living organism. It consists of 1 billion bacteria called autotrophs. Ordinary plants absorb carbon dioxide and use photosynthesis to produce oxygen. This cave is filled with carbon dioxide. Autotrophs absorb it and secrete tiny food particles. Bacteria feed on these particles. Larger organisms then feed on those bacteria, and so on. In the end, there's enough food for everyone. This process is called chemosynthesis. It's like photosynthesis, but uses water instead of sunlight in its chemical reactions. In this cave, evolution has created a completely unique biological system, separate from the rest of the world.
47-year-old Kenny Veach told his family he was going hiking for 2 days. His destination? The Mojave Desert. The man wanted to revisit a cave he had discovered during one of his previous hikes. But that was the last time anyone had seen Kenny Veach. A helicopter and over 30 search and rescue teams came back empty. The hiker was nowhere to be found. Was the mysterious M Cave behind his disappearance? The oddest thing about Kenny's case is the fact that he was a seasoned hiker. He often went on solo trips to explore deserts in California and Nevada. The man was an ultralight hiker. That meant he brought only the most basic of supplies: water, food, and a tent. That's all. But this was enough for several days of camping in the desert. Kenny would rarely bring a GPS device with him. He didn't even bother to pack a compass or a map. Some would call him reckless, but he managed to get back home every single time. Kenny wasn't shy either. He had a YouTube channel where he regularly posted his adventures. He named his channel Snakebit McGee because he picked up snakes wherever he went. But Kenny also had another habit. He went into every cave he found in the desert. Now, he didn't post many videos. Kenny mostly used YouTube to comment on other people's adventures. In a comment from June 2014, the man revealed that he had discovered a mysterious M-shaped cave. It was located in the Sheep Mountains of North Las Vegas. Kenny's description of the cave is where the weird part of the story begins. He spotted it while hiking and noticed the cave had an interesting entrance. It was shaped like a perfect letter M. Kenny went up to it, but something didn't seem right. He reported that his body started to shake as he approached the cave. The vibrations were so strong near the entrance that Kenny turned back. In his own words, he was scared for his life. It must have really been something if it frightened an experienced trekker. Kenny had an impressive track record. He had been hiking for 20 years. He explored caves other people were too afraid to even enter. Once, he was bitten by a rattlesnake and had to spend a week in the hospital. On his journeys, the man found skulls of all shapes and sizes, as well as old animal traps. Kenny slept on mountain peaks under the stars. One time, he hurt his leg on a mountaintop. He had to walk 20 miles back to his truck. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit that day, and Kenny had 1 cup of water to keep him going. Kenny Veach was a true survivalist. But this one cave was a mystery to him. He admitted that he was totally unprepared that day. He had the tools to open a can, but not to fight the mysterious force that took over his body. But Kenny wasn't a quitter. He made plans to return to the M Cave, and this time, he was going to be ready. He did so several months later, but much better equipped. But the trip turned out to be a bust. He recorded a video, but couldn't find the cave. Was that it? Was the brave explorer finally going to quit? Not by a long shot. His followers on social media wanted him to solve the mystery. So he went out into the desert for the 3rd time. He planned a short, overnight trip, but nobody ever saw him again. After 2 days, his family alerted the authorities. They quickly launched a search for the missing man. Now we come to the weird part. In one of his videos, Kenny stood in front of an abandoned mine shaft. This is where he briefed the viewers on the mission. Rescue teams reached this point and found Kenny's phone. This was 10 days into the search, but the trail soon went cold. The rescuers feared the worst. They decided to send a camera down the shaft, but didn't find anything. For a full month, no one had any idea where Kenny was. And then, the mystery deepened. An unknown woman came forward online. She claimed to be the missing man's girlfriend. The mysterious woman told the story of how she went with Kenny on hour-long hikes. She urged hikers to use GPS not to get lost. And then, a claim that shocked social media users. The woman believed Kenny's disappearance wasn't an accident. She revealed that her alleged boyfriend had some serious issues. Apparently, he had quit his job a year prior to his disappearance. Did Kenny Veach really trek into the desert to take his own life? People weren't convinced. Kenny's daughter believed her father just had an accident. In her words, he was a survivor. Was the mysterious M Cave responsible for his disappearance? Did he find someone or something he shouldn't have found there? The questions linger, and so did the theories among the online community. Fellow hikers and YouTubers were determined to find the M Cave. This would solve Kenny Veach's mysterious disappearance once and for all. In 2021, one hiker got lucky. He claimed to have found the secretive M Cave. For safety reasons, the man couldn't reveal his exact location. The cave sits somewhere near Nevada State Route 375 East. The entrance to the cave really looked like an oversized letter M, just like Veach described it. But the shape is too hard to notice from ground level. Only when you look at it from above is the M shape visible. Who knows? Hikers might have been walking past it for years without noticing the cave. Even Kenny couldn't locate the entrance the second time he went looking for it. The cave wasn't very deep, but there was something odd at the entrance. There appears to have been a straight line of rocks. Did someone try to wall off the entrance? And at the back of the cave, there was an even stranger find. Small pieces of wood were scattered along the floor. They looked a lot like 2x4s that are used in construction. Was there a door here once? The hiker found a nail sticking out of the stone. It could be part of a latch that was there some time ago. But the strangest part was the writing on the wall. Hatch or Veach? It's hard to tell. The hiker that discovered the cave didn't want to stay to find out. He left the cave in a hurry. No, it wasn't because he felt a strange vibration in his body like Kenny. He just didn't want to be in a desert cave in the middle of nowhere. This is the Mojave Desert, one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth. Could this setting better explain how Kenny Veach disappeared without a trace in 2014? The desert's nickname is well-deserved. This is where scientists recorded the hottest temperature on the planet. 134 degrees Fahrenheit, and the average temperature during summer, just 113 degrees Fahrenheit, no sweat. But you'll also need a blanket. At night, the air temperatures drop well below freezing. Talk about a climate roller coaster. And the list of dangers doesn't end there. The driest and hottest place in the United States is home to dangerous animals. Mountain lions, venomous lizards, spiders, and wasps. You name it. Any one of these animals can end the life of an unsuspecting hiker. There is a reason why Kenny always wore snake guards when trekking. And then there are mine shafts. Local authorities strongly advise hikers not to enter them. These old mines from the 1800s are highly unstable. A person can easily fall down a hidden shaft. They also have pockets of bad air, which can suffocate a person. And remember the likable wildlife? They too live in these shafts. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, and black widow spiders. Kenny Veach could have easily fallen into one of these shafts, and there would be no help for him from miles around, since Nevada is one of the least populated states.
Humanity has been looking to the stars, searching for secrets that outer space is hiding. But deep underground, within the soil of our own planet, there are literal troves of fantastic things just waiting to be discovered. How can you talk about excavations and not mention Egypt? In 2019, archaeologists uncovered a tomb of a high official in South Saqqara who lived about 4,400 years ago. His name was Kui, and the hieroglyphs on the walls of the tomb recited his many titles, one of which was the sole friend of the pharaoh of the time. The discovery could have been pretty usual for Egypt, if not for the tomb's interior. The walls, the ceiling, and even parts of the floor were covered in hieroglyphs, pictures, and intricate patterns. But what surprised the scientists the most was how well preserved the colors of those images were. Despite the cracks and chips on the walls and the ceiling, they were still bright and vivid, almost as if they had been painted recently. In Israel, a whole city was discovered by archaeologists in 2019. It dated back 5,000 years to the early Bronze Age and was home to about 6,000 people. Millions of tools, fragments of pottery items, and stone vessels were found at the site. Scientists say the city was so huge, it could be called the New York of the period. The megalopolis was carefully planned, with dozens of streets, alleyways, and public and residential areas. Archaeologists state that the citizens used to live and trade not only with different regions, but also with various cultures and kingdoms. Bar Hill is an Iron Age settlement in eastern England, and archaeologists suddenly stumbled upon a very unusual thing there. As they were scouting the area, they looked inside one particular ditch and found thousands of frog bones. Later calculations showed more than 8,000 bones belonged to frogs and toads. There were no signs of damage. The bones lay in heaps and piles. Scientists have no idea what could have drawn so many frogs and toads to a single place. It's known that local people of the time ate frogs, so the settlement's inhabitants could have brought them there. Other versions state that the frogs could have come for the large amounts of insects feeding on the crops, or they may have been looking for a body of water and got trapped in the ditch. As for now, the frog mystery remains unsolved. Not so much mysterious as amusing. A nearly 1,800-year-old insult was found carved in stone, not far from Hadrian's Wall in England. An ancient Roman fort just south of the wall had a lot of writing tablets, but this particular one was especially curious because of its contents. The stone mentioned some Secundinus and said a pretty nasty thing about him. In fact, this is the first stone graffiti ever found that indicates Romans did have quarrels amongst themselves. A rancher in Wyoming, not far from the town of Newcastle, was going about his ranching business when he suddenly stumbled upon a weird bone sticking out from the soil. As he carefully dug it out, he realized the bone belonged to a huge creature. It was larger than a bear. But even so, there were no bears in the area. The rancher called scientists to figure out what it was all about. When they excavated the parts, they ended up with 3 skeletons of dinosaurs, Triceratops to be precise. Researchers were astounded by the discovery for 2 reasons. First, the skeletons were surprisingly complete. They were limb bones, skull parts, feet, and parts of tails. Second, Triceratops had been considered loners because all the previously found skeletons were found alone. In this case, there were 3 of them. One seemed to be a youth, while the 2 others were probably its parents. Judging by the tooth marks on the bones of the largest of the 3, a T-Rex attacked the family, and they couldn't escape from the huge predator. The catacombs of Paris are yet to be fully charted, and strange things keep coming up down there. One of them was found in August of 2004. The local police were having a routine training exercise in the caverns not far from the Eiffel Tower when they unexpectedly came upon a large cave transformed into a fully equipped movie theater. The chamber had an arena where the viewers would sit, a full-sized screen, a projector, and many movies to watch. Interestingly, they were all regular ones, featuring 50s noir films and more recent pictures. There was also a second, smaller cavern adjacent to the first one, which was used as a restaurant. Someone installed an electricity system and at least 3 phone lines in the underground cinema. But the most sinister thing happened when the officers returned to the site 3 days later to further investigate the matter. They found that all the power cables and phone lines had been cut, and a mysterious handwritten note was lying in the middle of the floor, saying, "Do not try to find us." Nobody still knows who built that underground movie theater and why. In 1948, the first report came about a puzzling 93-mile-long wall built in Jordan. It's still unknown who made it, when, and why. Its purpose is not defensive. It was too low and narrow to have protected anything from anyone. It lies in ruins today, of course, but when it was still quite new, most of it was about 3 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. The most popular theory explains that the strange wall might have served as a farmland boundary. Researchers found traces of ancient agricultural lands to the west of the wall. The boundary might have protected those from hungry goats emerging from the east with nomadic tribes. While we're still in Jordan, there's one more mystery here: stone circles that date back 2,000 years. They're pretty big, with a diameter of about 1,300 feet or more. So far, scientists have discovered 11 of these big circles. Yes, that's their official name. Still, they're just a couple of feet high, making them even more puzzling. Originally, researchers believed they were huge corrals for animals, but there are no openings between the stones the circles are made from to let people or cattle in or out. Currently, no one knows who built these ancient structures or why. Archaeologists in Glasgow excavated a 5,000-year-old stone slab in 2016 and then buried it again. The slab is called the Cockno stone and has been known to the locals since the 19th century. The stone is large and flat, measuring 43 by 26 feet, and has swirling decorations that had been found at many other prehistoric sites across the globe. The stone was first fully excavated in 1887, but within the following decades, it was covered in graffiti by unknown people. So, to avoid further damage, a group of archaeologists buried it in the ground again in 1965. And then, in 2016, another group of researchers unearthed the Kakno stone again to record the artwork using modern photography and surveying techniques. You've heard all about Stonehenge, but what about the Superhenge? In 2015, archaeologists couldn't believe their eyes when they discovered a whole number of stone monoliths just a couple of miles away from Stonehenge. They had once stood upright, but about 4,500 years ago, the wind and erosion of the ground must have pushed them over, which is why nobody had discovered them earlier. Their purpose remains unknown, but scientists have a few theories. It could have been a giant Neolithic monument, or it could have formed a C-shaped arena leading down to the Avon River nearby. The springs and a valley completed the picture, so the Superhenge might have served as some sort of a decoration or even as part of a larger structure combined with the Stonehenge not far away.
Imagine dark labyrinths, deep, deep underground. They're full of hidden dangers and unexpected discoveries. Get your flashlight and let me take you on a tour of the spookiest caves of all time. And the first destination on our list is Cathedral Caverns in Alabama. Originally, this place was called Bat Cave, but it was later renamed because of what it looks like. As you approach it, you can't help but notice its huge entrance, measuring 126 feet wide and 25 feet high. But this grand entrance is just the beginning. Inside the cave, there are some of the most beautiful formations nature has ever created. One of the most famous of them is probably Goliath, a giant 45 feet tall stalagmite with a circumference of 243 feet. Other amazing sights you might want to visit include a caveman balancing on top of a flowstone wall, a frozen waterfall, and a forest of tall stalagmites. You're probably curious, how did such an exciting place make it onto the list of the scariest caves out there? The thing is, the sheer size of the cave is still unknown, and only about 2 miles of it are mapped and open to the public. But the cave can and does show its dangerous side from time to time. For example, the directors of the 1984 sci-fi movie What Waits Below filmed a lot of scenes in Cathedral Caverns. But during the shooting, 17 cast and crew members got carbon monoxide poisoning and had to be immediately taken to a hospital, barely avoiding serious consequences. But let's move further to Moaning Cavern in California. What makes it particularly creepy is the bizarre breathing sound. It's produced by water dripping through bottle-like openings at the base of the cave. If a person who's unaware of the nature of this breathing comes close, this ominous respiration might cause them to steer clear of the place. On the other hand, these moaning sounds might have evoked curiosity in some adventurous souls, and usually it didn't end well. Researchers have found the remains of more than 100 prehistoric people who fell down the cave's 410-foot chasm around 13,000 years ago. These days, you can go on a tour around the cave, but no deeper than 165 feet into the vertical opening. If you're feeling particularly bold, you can rappel down. But you'll still have to exit using a Gothic-looking wrought iron staircase. Be careful not to slip. It's a long way down. The next cave we'll visit is ominously called Hellhole. You can find it in West Virginia. It's notorious enough to inspire a few horror movies. Despite its name, the place is chilly, but no less creepy for this discrepancy. The average temperature inside the cave is 47 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it the perfect home for a large variety of bats and other rare cave-dwelling inhabitants. In fact, in the winter, the cave accommodates about half of the world's population of Virginia big-eared bats. These are critically endangered and highly vulnerable creatures. But it won't stop a chill from running down your spine once you see a cloud of 20,000 squeaking, wing-fluttering bats. Bell Witch Cave is a relatively small formation located in Tennessee. And despite its innocent appearance, it serves as the focal point for an equally fantastic and terrifying story. According to the legend, in the early part of the 19th century, the farmer and his family suffered from the mischief of a ghost. It made a lot of noise at night, ripped sheets from beds, and even physically attacked the farmer and some of his family members. Eventually, the farmer passed away, and a vial with unknown black liquid was found next to him. Some people believed that the ghost had somehow poisoned him. Soon after that, the spirit left the farmer's family alone. Locals were sure the ghost had returned to a cave near the farm. They also believed the mystical creature promised to return when the time was right. Even today, local inhabitants report strange occurrences happening around the cave. They swear they are linked to the ghost once taunting the farmer's family. I bet that no matter how skeptical you are, the cave will make your skin crawl. And this is Wind Cave in South Dakota. At first glance, it might seem that there's nothing super scary about this cavern. No roiling mass of bats, no ancient remains or toxic gases. But the cave is home to a blood-chilling and very rare geological feature. Nowhere else in the world will you find a more extensive network of boxwork calcite. How did Wind Cave create the perfect conditions for the boxwork remains? It's still a mystery. But what you do notice is that this boxwork resembles a massive spider web a bit too much for comfort. Even though it's just a geological anomaly, it's hard to look at the boxwork and not imagine tons of cave spiders skittering along those thin strands of hardened minerals. Now, let me take you to a place that seems to be out of this world. There's nothing mysterious or dangerous about this place, but it's kinda unique. Life inside this cave has been isolated from the outside world for about 5.5 million years. And it does show. See for yourself. Because of such long isolation, the conditions inside Mobile Cave are like nowhere else in the world. Despite a severe lack of sunlight inside the cave and the toxicity of the air, a unique ecosystem is flourishing there. The cave is located a few miles west of the Black Sea in Romania, and it was first found in 1986. These days, you can only visit it if you have special permission. But even if you have it, the central caverns are guarded naturally by super narrow limestone tunnels and vertical shafts. So, those who are familiar with claustrophobia shouldn't enter this place. In the depth of the cave, the air has twice less oxygen than the air outside. It contains a lot of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, which means it's not the freshest air you can breathe. It's also pitch black inside the cavern. But despite, or should I say, thanks to, this cocktail of extremely harsh conditions, the site is a true goldmine for biologists. Life seems to be booming here. In a 1996 study, scientists identified 48 species living there. 33 of them are unique to the cave. Most of the creatures inhabiting the cave are tiny. They have long limbs and antennae, helping them navigate in the dark. They also have no vision and lack pigment, which makes sense. Why would you need to be able to see if you live in total darkness? And why would you need to be pretty and colorful with no one to see you? Now, get ready to explore one more cave. No less amazing, but very different. This is the Giant Crystal Cave, aka Cave of the Crystals, in Mexico. These massive crystals were found in 2000 by a mining company after the water was pumped out of the cave. 2 miners then entered the drying cave on foot and saw the crystals. These awe-inspiring crystals are actually massive gypsum pillars hidden 984 feet underground. Scientists estimate that the crystals could have been already growing for 500,000 years. That's why many of them are so long and wide that you can walk across them. Unfortunately, visiting this wonder of nature is impossible at the moment. But maybe it's for the better, since Giant Crystal Cave is a dangerous place that can easily turn into a trap. For tens of thousands of years, it was filled with groundwater, which was originally pushed upward into the opening by a magma chamber located in the depths of our planet. The magma under the cave kept the water hot, but eventually, the temperature of the water dipped below 136 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, the water started to fill with calcium and sulfate, whose particles began to recombine into gypsum, and then white-tinted crystals took over the cave. And since they stayed underwater, they were able to keep growing.
We're in the Caribbean, and these are the Taino people. Scientists have long believed that they were the first inhabitants of the Greater Antilles, and those people were roaming the Isles long before Columbus discovered this place. However, a recent discovery showed that there were some other peoples living there. These guys are called the Archaic people, and they are now known for being good at using stone tools. They've used a whole bunch of polished tools, such as hammers, axes, and whatsoever. We still haven't found out how they managed to invent and produce all those tools without special equipment. Scientists are now looking for a sort of necropolis, or a similar archaeological site, to find out more about these people. Another curious settlement was found a couple of years ago, not far away from Florida. This one is pre-Columbian too, but it seems that the dwellers there were more into fashion than crafting using stone tools. The scientists discovered a complex of 37 oyster shell rings. There were many households with these rings, and the locals would produce beads from the shells of marine creatures. By the way, long ago, beads weren't intended only for fashion, but they were also an important social instrument. People would sew them on their clothes to manifest their power or wealth. Sometimes archaeologists manage to discover whole cities. This is exactly what Eleni Korka, an archaeologist from Greece, did. She found the lost city of Tania back in 2018. It wasn't a lucky coincidence. The whole search took as much as 34 years. By the way, Tania was even considered a mythical city. The city of Tania was a Trojan-founded city, and the ancient texts claimed it was incredibly wealthy. Well, seems like the texts were true. The archaeologists found around 200 coins on the site. Some jewelry was found there too. For instance, there was an iron ring with a seal. They also found a gold coin that was supposedly used to pay for a journey to the afterlife. Yeah, back then, people believed that it existed, and they needed to pay for a ticket to get there. The discovered clay, stones, and marble floors help us imagine what their dwellings looked like. And the archaeologists also found some vases there. One of the earliest examples of human-made art is located in the cave of Altamira in northern Spain. The paintings in a Paleolithic cave are so special because they're not monochrome, but have several colors combined. Still, these earliest masterpieces were hidden for a long time. They were only discovered in 1868, and today, this cave is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Despite how old these paintings are, they're well preserved because they've been well isolated for all this time. Since the gallery was located deep in a cave, it was almost impossible for external climatic influences to ruin these prehistoric masterpieces. We're now in England, 2009. Meet Terry Herbert, a member of the Blockwitch Research and Metal Detecting Club. One day, he was casually inspecting plowed farmland in Staffordshire with a metal detector. I guess he must have wanted to find something special, but I bet he didn't expect to find what he actually stumbled upon. He discovered something that scientists later called the largest hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver metalwork ever found. There's a list of items discovered, but if I start reading it to you, it's going to take me a really long time. To make a long story short, the archaeologists found 11 pounds of gold, 3 pounds of silver, and about 3,500 pieces of jewelry. No wonder this discovery is called the Staffordshire Hoard. The Birmingham Museum and the Art Gallery and Potteries Museum chipped in and bought the entire collection for over £3 million. Messages in a bottle are a famous cultural phenomenon we often see in movies, but it turns out this method of preserving letters is quite efficient. This is proven by the Dead Sea Scrolls. Back in the 1940s, Bedouin shepherds discovered 7 scrolls contained in clay jars in a cave. These scrolls were determined to be around 2,000 years old. But these manuscripts were only the beginning of a number of great discoveries. The Bedouins sold these manuscripts, but people continued finding more. The last discovery took place in 2021, and who knows, maybe there's more to find. Another piece of art recently found in a cave was a painted shell. This fossil was discovered in northern Italy, and scientists believe such fossils were collected by Neanderthals. This find is curious for a reason. Neanderthals are believed to have been quite primitive, but this shell proves the opposite. Back in 2004, Robert Muckle, an archaeology professor, heard about a peculiar site hidden in the forest of the North Shore Mountains of British Columbia. Robert knew that a few old cans and a saw blade had been found there. This place was believed to be a sort of logging camp, but a thorough excavation that took 14 years to complete revealed something different. Turns out, it wasn't a logging camp, but a long-lost Japanese settlement. The archaeologists found around 1,000 items, such as white and blue rice bowls, teapots, pocket watches, sake bottles, and buttons. The ceramics weren't that well preserved, so they only discovered hundreds of fragments. In one of his interviews, Robert mentioned that they also found remnants of a bathhouse. The community that lived there was pretty small, since there were only about 14 houses found. The scientists believe that they must have lived there in secret. People have changed their preferences over the centuries. Fashion has certainly changed, and our houses too, not to mention our technologies. But there's one thing for sure that's been unchanged: our love for food. Scientists managed to discover some of the oldest examples of people's favorite food. They inspected some ancient pottery and managed to find traces of best-loved food dating back to around 2000 BCE. It all happened in Sicily. And guess what that food was? No, it wasn't pizza or pasta, but olive oil. And there's more. Researchers from Egypt discovered some lumpy substance in some ancient pottery, which turned out to be cheese. It dates back to the 13th century BCE. I guess it didn't smell nice, since that cheese is estimated to be over 3,000 years old and was bacteria-ridden. Cool fact here, this cheese must have been quite exquisite. After studying it, scientists came to the conclusion that it was cooked with a variety of milks. They claim ancient people used a mixture of cow's milk and sheep or goat's milk. You probably thought, hey, you mentioned olive oil and cheese, but what about bread? Sure, bread is inseparable from almost any culture, and different people have had their own type of bread. And there's scientific proof that bread was one of the first dishes people learned how to cook. A group of archaeologists found some bread that was over 14,000 years old, 14,400 years old to be precise. What's weird is that people back then weren't familiar with agriculture. They were hunters. And technically, this old bread predates the age of agriculture by 4,000 years. Yeah, there's still much to learn about the ancient world. Here comes not the sun and the Beatles song, but here comes the bonus fact. And right, it's about the Beatles. Yeah, I know, they're not exactly new. The band was formed in 1960. But not all of our facts have to be thousands of years old to be cool. Back in 1966, the Beatles did a live performance of their song Paperback Writer on the TV program Top of the Pops. The BBC somehow didn't record the performance, and all the fans were sure it was lost. Nope. Turns out that David Chandler, a fan of the Beatles, recorded the show with his personal camera. It was long forgotten and stored in the attic for many years. The recording was rediscovered in 2019. I guess that's a pretty cool find. You're walking down the street. You see a strange-looking antique shop called Ageless Trinkets of Mr. Bright. You're curious, so you enter there. You take a look at all the weird stuff. Suddenly, an old folded parchment paper catches your attention. It's a world map, but something's off with it. Instead of showing the countries as you know them, it shows the locations of 4 mythical lost worlds and civilizations. Mr. Bright, the shop owner, comes next to you after realizing your shock. This map won't let you find these places or anything, but I can explain to you the legends behind them if you want, he says. Let me begin with Atlantis. You might know it as Aquaman's underwater kingdom, but Atlantis, the fictional island, was actually first introduced in two of Plato's works. According to him, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and its story had been passed down by poets, authors, and others. He wrote about Atlantis and its citizens to give a moral lesson and to teach about the dangers of arrogance, as well as the eventual downfall of those who are after too much power. In his dialogues, Plato stated that Atlantis was a great and powerful empire that was respected in all parts of the world. It was founded by beings who were half deities and half human, and became a great naval power after a while. Being an island filled with gold, silver, and other precious metals certainly helped their case. But besides that, it was also known for its breathtaking architecture and state-of-the-art technology, as well as its countless rare and exotic wild animals. Atlanteans were proud of their great achievements and the perfection of their civilization, but their excessive pride was going to bring their downfall. They believed they were so superior that they could gain control over any nation. This led them to launch a series of invasions. They conquered many of the Mediterranean lands, but when it was time to enter Athens, Athenians pushed back with an extraordinary force, so the Atlanteans were finally defeated. Plato stated that deities then got angry at Atlanteans because of how wicked, greedy, and immoral they became. So they punished them by sending earthquakes, which caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Although the earliest written records of Atlantis were Plato's works, some people still believed his story to be based on truth and tried to identify the island of Atlantis with actual countries. Some people suggested it may have been located in the Mediterranean Sea, near the coast of Spain or Italy. Others thought it may have been located in the Caribbean, off the coast of Central or South America, but there was no solid evidence to support any of these claims. One theory, in particular, seemed more plausible than the others, though. Located in the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini was the home of a highly advanced Minoan society. However, due to a huge volcanic eruption, it was destroyed about 3,600 years ago, causing the Minoan civilization to suddenly disappear. These similarities between the fictional Atlanteans and the historical Minoans made Santorini a good candidate for the speculations. Yet again, there were still major flaws with it, such as how the time when Plato said Atlantis was destroyed doesn't coincide with the time of Santorini's eruption. So Atlantis still continues to be regarded as nothing more than a popular legend in the scientific world. Now, let's move toward the northeast direction on the map, Mr. Bright says. According to Celtic Breton mythology, there once was a magnificent city called Ys, also known as Caris, that towered over Douarnenez Bay in France's Brittany region. It was the most wealthy city in the entire Atlantic. It was especially famous for its beautiful gardens and buildings, and its citizens were all living comfortably and happily there. Dahut, who was King Bradlon's daughter in Breton legends and literature, had a deep love for the sea. She begged her father to build a city at the edge of the sea, and that is how the city of Ys was established. Little did she know that she would be the one responsible for the destruction of her father's beloved gift. You see, since the city was surrounded by the sea, it needed to be protected by a dike equipped with floodgates, and these gates could only be opened at low tide. And the only one who had the keys to these gates was the king himself. One day, a handsome red knight arrived at the city, but couldn't pass the gates. Dahut was so taken by him that she wanted to let him in. She knew that her father was the keeper of the only key to the city, so she sneaked into his room and stole it from him. Then she gave it to the Red Knight so that he could enter the city and they could be together. However, The Red Knight turned out to be the Prince of Darkness, and he intentionally left the gate open to the raging sea. The waves soon swallowed all of Ys. King Gradlon was able to escape on his magical horse, but Dahut couldn't. She turned into an evil mermaid who lured sailors into the sea. Today, if you go to Quimper, a city in Brittany, northwest France, you can find the statue of King Gradlon riding on his horse. Although the city of Ys is a legend, Brittany coast locals believe that on the days when the waters are calm, you can still hear the tolls of the city bells deep under the sea, if you listen carefully. Mr. Bright then points at the Indian Ocean on the map and says, "Now, have you heard about Lemuria?" Back in the mid-1800s, a few scientists suggested that there was once a continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, somewhere close to the south of modern-day Sri Lanka. The first one to popularize this theory was the British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater. In his paper, The Mammals of Madagascar, he stated that he found lemur fossils in India, and not in Africa. However, this discovery was extremely shocking to him because of the fact that lemurs' original homeland, Madagascar, is much closer to Africa. He proposed that this was possible only if some larger continent connected the two once. He stated that this continent must have eventually sunk to the ocean floor. He then named it Lemuria, and hence the theory was born. People who came after Sclater took his theory a step further and thought that Lemuria was also the home of an extinct race of humans called Lemurians, who had 4 arms and enormous bodies, and were also the ancestors of modern-day humans, as well as lemurs. Of course, as new scientific discoveries were made on plate tectonics, evolution, and the study of DNA, the theories regarding the fictional continent called Lemuria were debunked. The last fictional land on the map is Agartha, Mr. Bright says. Taking its roots from Eastern mysticism, one legend says there's a kingdom called Agartha that is located deep beneath the surface of the earth. It's where all 4 corners of the world are connected by paths and tunnels. It is said that there's a secret entrance into Agartha hidden in the Gobi Desert, and it's built by Agarthans themselves using advanced technology that can't be detected by us, the surface folks. According to some beliefs, Agartha exists to counterbalance the energies of those who live above the surface. While we live in a state of rush and heightened emotions, this world beneath us is the total opposite. Some even say that those who escaped Atlantis fled here to continue their lives inside the Earth's core. And yet, others think it's actually a land that's crawling with all kinds of monsters. But there's no need to be scared, since modern science proved Earth's core is not actually hollow and is a solid hot iron ball. So you can cancel your journey plans to the center of the Earth if you've made any. Thanks, Mr. Bright.
A banana peel in the middle of the room, some old shoes sprayed with neon paint, a huge tree trunk chopped in 7 parts. Modern art can be tricky to interpret. Well, we can at least ask the artist what message they were trying to send. Scientists working with cave paintings don't have that luxury, but they still do their best trying to find out more about early humans through that art. The oldest example of prehistoric abstract art modern humans have found so far is around 73,000 years old, and it looks like a hashtag. It was found in the Blombos Cave in South Africa in 2011. The scientists studied it well to prove it was deliberately painted by our ancestors and not just some ochre, which can produce natural pigment imprinted on the rock. But when they tried to recreate the ancient hashtag, they realized it was most likely created with ochre crayons. Plus, the painting is on the smoothest side of the rock, so all signs point to prehistoric art. We still don't know what that hashtag means, but it would be super cool if it had been part of some prehistoric version of Instagram. Many of the later cave images explored so far are easier to understand. They are of animals of all kinds. The 20th century was super successful when it came to finding those, especially in Western Europe, in the mountains of France and Spain. In 1940, 4 guys tried to rescue their dog that fell in a foxhole and stumbled across one of the biggest prehistoric art galleries, the Lascaux Cave. It has 600 paintings, mostly of animals, deer, bison, horses, bears, and even lions. There are also some human figures. Scientists dated that art to around 15,000 years before the current era. Naming the exact age is tricky when it comes to cave paintings, because they usually don't have organic material that scientists can use for carbon dating. The meaning of the paintings is still a topic for discussion, but they were obviously created by some really skilled hands. The same hands probably made sandstone lamps that used animal fat as fuel and fireplaces to light the workshop. They used bright colors like red, yellow, and black, all provided by natural pigments. They also did some grinding, mixing, and heating, and then applied the paints using different techniques: fingers or charcoal, brushes made of hair or moss, and even hollow bones to spray the pigment onto the wall. Those artists were more advanced than you can possibly imagine. More recent discoveries in other parts of the world give us a whole new understanding of art history. A huge painting showing 6 animals, native wild pigs, and dwarf buffaloes chased by humans in a cave in Indonesia is a sound proof that cave art doesn't only come from Europe, unlike what scientists used to believe. The Indonesian art was dated around 44,000 years ago, way older than those French paintings. This ancient storytelling is believed to be a landmark of human development, so this discovery might even change our views on evolution. Plus, some of the human figures have animal features, like beaks and tails. It means that our ancestors were starting to develop their own mythology back then already. Australia is the record holder when it comes to prehistoric cave paintings. Most of them are in Arnhem Land. If you ever take a stroll around this art gallery of the past, you'll see some images of koalas, dingoes, and other Australian staples. But wait, who are those guys? One theory says they could be mythical creatures formed from parts of various animals, a plot of the rich imagination of Aboriginal artists. Another theory is more scientific. They could be animals that had long gone extinct. Researchers tried to recreate the looks of ancient animals using incomplete skeletons they had found. But those guesses could be wrong because a skeleton doesn't let us see the fur, fat, and other features, and the portraits could be wrong. And while technology is pushing science forward, we might actually look for answers in the past crayon sketches for answers. One of the animals that often pops up in the Australian cave chronicles is medium-sized and looks somewhat like a dog. It seems to resemble a Tasmanian tiger that was wiped off the earth in the 20th century. Closer studies prove that it could be a way more ancient animal, though, the marsupial lion, which went extinct around 30,000 years ago. It had broader and shorter jaws than the most delicately built Tasmanian tiger, and large, heavy forelimbs with long claws. One of the paintings is missing stripes, which are a distinctive feature of any tiger. Archaeologists suppose that those ancient artists could have just painted over the stripes after the tiger had gone extinct. That's one prehistoric way of deleting a photo with your ex from your social media. Another prehistoric animal that probably got painted over and out of history is the giant kangaroo at the Uber Rock Complex. This guy was not much like the kangaroos we know and love today. It had a thick body with a long neck, and it preferred hunching over to standing upright. Its tail was thick from beginning to end, and it had a short muzzle. Scientists analyzed all the species of short-faced kangaroos that have lived down under along with the humans. They then chose the one that matched the most. It was twice as large as present-day roos and was too heavy to hop. There's also a smaller image atop the kangaroo portrait. It's a bird with feathers but no wings. It could be an extinct emu or some other flightless bird of the past. Australian caves aren't the only visual encyclopedia of extinct megafauna. The Amazon is hiding an 8-mile-long stone canvas with images of animals that were here at the end of the most recent ice age. One of these animals is the mastodon, the great-grandparent of modern elephants, a member of the mammoth family. They were shorter than their descendants, and their skull was lower and of simpler construction. Their legs looked too short for their long bodies. What were they doing in the Amazon? It looks like they came here when the climate in the region was changing, and so did the vegetation of the forest. Madagascar, known to anyone who has seen the animated movie with the same name as the land of King Julian and his supporters, has its own cave paintings. And yes, you can see the giant lemur there. Those guys grew as tall as gorillas and shared the island with now extinct elephant birds and other creatures you'll probably be happy you won't meet. We still don't know why and how the giant lemurs had gone extinct. But since rock art often shows humans chasing the more contemporary lemur version, that could be the answer. If later cave art serves as an encyclopedia of extinct megafauna, the earlier, more abstract version could be proof that Neanderthals had their own language. Scientists see a direct link between the ability for symbolic thinking and the ability to have a language. A professor of linguistics and Japanese language and culture at MIT says that it's tricky to study language history because it doesn't fossilize. Linguists have to look for other artifacts that could answer their questions. Cave art could be one of those. Another thing that could help scientists is analyzing the acoustics in cave art areas. Their placement might not be random. It could have to do with sounds people heard in this or that spot. Another question we still have to answer is why early humans made art. Did they do it for the sake of the process? Or maybe they saw it as totems to protect their clans. In the second case, depicted animals would have to be way more diverse as different groups would have different protectors. There are still more questions than answers, and hopefully, humanity will solve the mystery at some point. Now the first rule is not to panic, the guy says. He gives Michael a thick suit. The weather is hot here, and the outfit seems very warm. You can't go without it, he adds. Michael puts on the outfit and feels goosebumps all over his body. Why is it so cold? The guide explains this is a unique cooling cloth. It'll save Michael from heat stroke inside the cave. The guide gives him an oxygen tank and a mask. Are we gonna dive? Michael asks. No, but your lungs may fill up with water if you don't use it. Michael's knees are shaking with fear. He doubts this whole idea. Welcome to one of the most dangerous caves on the planet, the guy says as he enters the dark space at the foot of a mountain. This place is called Crystal Cave, and it's located in Mexico. Magma had leaked here from the hot bowels of our planet 26 million years ago. It was coming and cooling down again and again. There was so much magma that it formed a mountain. Along with magma, mineral-rich water got here. It had been seeping through the rock tunnels and had formed a cave under the hill. Then, something strange appeared in these hot waters, something that seems to be from another planet. Michael is going down the road. He illuminates the bottomless darkness with a flashlight. The air becomes hot and heavy. Microscopic particles of water are hovering here. Along with a guide, Michael descends to 980 feet. This is more than half of the Empire State Building's height. The air temperature goes up. It feels as if they were approaching the Earth's core. Finally, the descent ends, and they jump on solid ground. The guy puts on an oxygen mask and tells Michael to do the same. You can't breathe in such moist and acidic air. The lungs can fill with water, which will lead to disastrous consequences. The air here feels to Michael as if he's walking through a very thick fog. The temperature rises up to 136 degrees Fahrenheit. It's higher than in the world's most hot deserts. Michael lights his way and notices something big, white, and shiny. It's a huge crystal beam sticking out of the ground that's reaching up. The whole cave is filled with these huge things. They stretch in different directions and rest against the ceiling and the walls. Somewhere they block the path, and somewhere they are like bridges. Michael climbs onto one of the crystals and walks on it. The guide explains that each column is made of gypsum. You know this substance as it's used to produce building material, plasterboard. Michael touches the hard surface of one of them. It seems that some ancient civilization could have built it. The guide says that everything inside this cave is natural. For the first time, this place was discovered by two miners in the year 2000. Since then, scientists have managed to find out that some crystals are 500,000 years old. You can also find one of the largest natural crystals in the world here. This beam is about 36 feet long and weighs 55 tons. This place is filled with water rich in calcium sulfate. This element is capable of forming minerals. A colorless variety of gypsum prevails here. The water and warm air help form the crystals. Humidity and temperature haven't changed for centuries, so these columns continue to grow even now. This place is fascinating. Michael wants to stay here longer to explore the cave, but unfortunately, it's dangerous. They may get lost or slip on the gypsum rocks. Plus, they're running out of oxygen, so they have to climb back up. They come out of the cave and meet the police. It turns out that it's prohibited for tourists to enter the cave. Even scientists must get special permission to go here. And it's for a good reason, since the cave is one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Michael and the guy pay a fine and leave Mexico. The next stop is Italy. "It's a good thing you've taken a good camera with you," the guide says. "This is one of the most fascinating caves in the world. You need the best equipment to capture this beauty." Michael and the guide are on a small boat. They sail along the coast of the island of Capri, Italy. Luckily, there won't be any danger this time. They are approaching a small rift inside the mountain. This is the entrance to the Blue Grotto. The hole is so tiny that only one boat can pass through it. Michael and the guide get into another dimension. The cave is filled with water. The walls are shining with blue light coming from the lake's depths. Michael takes pictures of the cave and notices that the entrance they got through glows with a bright white light. It's the sun's rays illuminating the cave as they enter it. There's another hole under the water. The sunlight penetrates through it, filling the lake with a blue glow. But it's time to move on. The next cave is in New Zealand. They arrive to the North Island. There's a place deep underground with winding, intricate caves. They appeared here about 30 billion years ago. Michael and the guide approach the entrance to the dark cave. Michael turns on a flashlight. "Take it away," the guy says. "You won't need it inside." They come in. Michael opens his mouth in surprise. The whole cave is filled with glowing lanterns. They are all living creatures, fireflies. They're shining with a blue light. Michael feels like he's on another planet. The entrance to the cave is limited to not harm the fireflies. Scientists use automated equipment to monitor the cave. They watch the temperature and the level of carbon dioxide necessary to maintain the life of glowing beetles. If many people get here, the level of carbon dioxide will increase. The time for a visit is also limited, so they ask Michael and the guide to leave the place. "Now, we're going to see something creepy," the guide says. "Are you ready?" And the next stop is California. The place is called Moaning Caverns. The cave seems quite ordinary from the outside, but the guide looks a little nervous and scared. They attach the rope to the belt and begin the long descent. The bottom is 165 feet deep. It's the height of a 15-story building. It seems not so big compared to the Crystal Cave. As Michael is going lower, it's getting cold and dark. At this point, all sounds from above disappear. They slowly sink into an ominous silence. "What is it?" Michael asks, startled. "I think I've heard someone's voice downstairs." The guide touches his lips with his finger to keep Michael silent. A long, prolonged human moan is coming from the dark cave depths. In the first seconds, Michael freezes. Then he quickly climbs up along the rope. The guide laughs at him. They hear another moan. Michael gets out of the cave and pulls the guide's rope to get him out. The guide says this is one of the creepiest caves in the world. The air and wind circulate deep inside and create a sound similar to a moan. Tourists often go down there to tickle their nerves. Also, they found about 100 skeletons of ancient people at the bottom of the cave, and no one knows how they got there. Michael doesn't want to go back inside the cave. He asks the guide to tell him how caves form. It turns out that it all starts when the ground absorbs acid rain consisting of water and carbon dioxide. The liquid penetrates through the soil and comes into contact with hard rock surfaces. When water touches limestone or dolomite, it dissolves them and helps to form an empty space. Every year there's more and more space around. The rain continues to fall and accumulate in this open area. Then the water forms a stream or an underground river. After that, the erosion of hard rocks begins. Thousands of years later, there's enough space to fit a human here. Then this space becomes a cave. When erosion combines with stalactites and stalagmites, it forms chambers and impressive columns. By the way, here's the difference between stalactites and stalagmites. Stalactites hang from the ceiling. Stalagmites stick out of the ground. It takes about 1 million years to develop such underground landscapes. So, every time you walk in these places, you come into contact with the ancient past of our planet.
Hey there, curious history buffs. Have you heard the legend of the ancient race of giants of Nevada? Yes, I'm talking about actual giants that allegedly lived thousands of years ago. Now I know what you're thinking. Giants, really? Well, archaeological finds add fuel to this debate too. And here's where it gets interesting. Lovelock Cave was indeed used as a burial site, and some of the remains found there are much larger than average human bones. The cave is by the Humboldt Sink in western Nevada. It was once part of an enormous lake, which eventually dried up, leaving a number of smaller ones, including the Humboldt Sink. The cave became the home of the Site-Ka tribe. According to the legend, these red-haired giants were so big that they had to be buried in the cave itself. Indeed, later on, archaeologists discovered 8 to 10 foot tall skeletons. This legend started to unfold when a mining engineer named John T. Reed talked to the locals in 1886. Once Reed saw the cave, he knew he was onto something. The news spread soon, but the cave was attracting another type of attention too. The deposits of a fertilizer known as guano were discovered inside the cave. So a mining company began excavating the precious resource in 1911 and soon shipped more than 250 tons of the fertilizer to San Francisco. Unfortunately, some of the human remains and artifacts were neglected and lost in the mining process. This led to an official excavation in 1912 and 1924. After the top layer of guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface. Around the area, the earliest evidence of human habitation dates back about 4,000 years. The Lovelock culture lasted for some 3,000 years, and they left us with 10,000 stunning artifacts. The pits in the cave were like a series of time capsules hidden at different depths. Archaeologists determined the age of each pit by its depth. It turns out that many different groups used the cave for storage over a really long time, and the things they stored there give us a really cool glimpse into their cultures. It's like a giant ancient storage unit full of hidden treasures. What have the researchers found besides the giant bones, you might ask? Some other bodies were mummified using a method similar to the one applied by ancient Egyptians. These remains also had something in common with the bodies discovered as far south as Lake Titicaca. Both mummies had some red hair. Yet, there are scientists who believe this reddish hue is the result of the interaction found in Lovelock Cave are simply the remains of prehistoric animals like mammoths or sloths. But others insist that there's something more to the story. Other relics, such as finely crafted baskets and exquisite duck decoys made from tule fibers, were also found there. In any case, this cave is worth the attention it gets. By the way, you can still visit this cave today and see the pits of different depths with your own eyes. But let me tell you one thing, it's in a hot, dry, and isolated place. Archaeologists have made another discovery that seems to be straight out of a legend. They think they found the palace of the one and only Odysseus, who was the legendary Greek king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem. Move over, Indiana Jones. We've got some real-life adventure happening here from around 1300 BCE. Apparently, This is the only palace mentioned in Homer's epic poems that hasn't been found. The excavations have been made on the Ionian Islands, and the view from the ruins found on the island of Ithaca are exactly as described in the Odyssey, says the professor who led the excavation team. Known to the ancient Romans as Ulysses, the Greek hero took 10 years to return home to Ithaca after the fall of Troy. For many years, Homer's other epic, called the Iliad, which tells the story of the protracted siege of Troy by the Greeks, was regarded as a myth too. But then, in the 1870s, Troy was rediscovered in modern-day Turkey's Çanakkale city. So, if they found Troy, who's to say they couldn't find Odysseus' home? The researchers were following Homer's words as a roadmap. The excavation site has a building complex with 2 levels. It has important finds such as storerooms and workshops, a complicated drainage system, and fragments of pottery. It also has a well from the 8th century BCE, which is around the time when Odysseus is believed to have been the king. Yet, not everyone is convinced that the team has actually discovered the home of Odysseus. A British researcher named Robert Biddlestone insists that Homer's description of ancient Ithaca isn't very similar to the island that now has its name, and that Odysseus' kingdom was actually on the Isle of Cephalonia. However, Italian archaeologist Adriano La Regina might have a more realistic approach to this debate. He says that whether this find has a connection to Ulysses or not, what's more important is the discovery of this royal palace. Once upon a time, in a land far away, the Klamath Indians spread a legend about the creation of Crater Lake. Okay, maybe this land is not that far away, and it still exists. You can find it in south-central Oregon, in the western United States. Anyway, the legend has it that this lake was formed in a vicious battle between 2 volcanoes, Mount Mazama and Mount Shasta. Then the spirits of Earth and the Sky, which are Lau, who ruled the below world, and Skel, the chief of the above world, joined the fight. It turned into a geological drama. During the battle, darkness veiled the land. The fight was over when Mount Mazama collapsed and sent Lau back into the underworld. Then the rain filled the pit and created a lake in the place where the mountain had once stood. Flash forward to our time. Scientists have discovered that Mount Mazama did erupt 7,700 years ago. Artifacts found in the area prove that the legend indeed contains some details about the explosion. The tale says that red-hot rocks were flying through the sky. This happened during the volcanic eruption that caused the mountain to collapse. This created the volcanic caldera, which later on got filled with water. What makes this legend came true story unusual is how long it has existed. According to researchers, these types of verbal stories lose their credibility within 600 to 700 years. That's why the legend about the creation of Crater Lake is so unique. So many generations, for hundreds of years, have been accurately passing down the information. This volcanic crater lake is now in a national park. It's famous for its deep blue color. The water in it is extremely clear. If you visit it today, the water you'll see won't be the same as for someone who will visit the place 250 years later. Because there are no rivers flowing into or out of the lake, the existing water evaporates and the lake gets filled again by rain and snowfall. Basically, every 250 years, the water is replaced. Plus, this lake is almost 2,000 feet deep, which makes it the deepest lake in the United States. Swimming is okay in the lake, but there's only one legal and safe trail to get to the shore. There are other activities, such as fishing and boat tours. Shared human experiences, such as birth, marriage, and aging, may explain why certain tales are shared globally. Similar struggles and obstacles faced by humans around the world generate similar themes in traditional stories about love, parenting, and mortality. So, do you have legends or tales you've heard of from your grandparents? Who knows? Maybe your ancestors too witnessed a cool historical event.
It's winter 1980. We're in the small town of Lyngby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, the girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood, but no one knows for sure. These days, she has an ordinary job and almost doesn't remember that day. Further research on this topic can help scientists create special medicines that can help in freezing temperatures. Just imagine that you could safely go outside in the winter wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Steam would be coming off your body, and the ice under your feet would be melting. You'd feel hot inside. A dream, perhaps. But realistically, winter coat manufacturers would, of course, never allow it. When you think of theme parks, you normally imagine laughter and fun times. But once they're closed and abandoned, now that's a whole different story. Let's take a look at some of them. You decide to take a trip to New Orleans to visit Six Flags. When you arrive there, you discover the theme park is deserted. The sign that says "Closed for Storm" is still standing. You're feeling adventurous, so you let yourself pass the crackling gates. Is it chilly in here, or is it just me? You walk past a swimming pool, and it looks like there's someone in there. You get closer and, oh no, it's an alligator. Better run and leave that thing alone. You keep exploring the site. The park took inspiration from the city's French architecture, but today the buildings are dirty, the windows are all shattered, and there are unusual items everywhere. Say, what is this vintage rollerblade doing here? The park closed during the hurricane, and it was left standing under 7 feet of water. No wonder the metal rides are all rusty now. This carousel doesn't look too inviting to me. We'll have to come back another time. Hey, at least you got some cool-looking pictures, right? Let's make this next one even more exciting. Imagine you plan to visit Data Park at night. Somewhere in the countryside of Belgium, you'll find a creepy theme park derelict from many years ago. You have nothing with you but the floodlight on your phone. You see the entrance of a bridge and start to make your way across. The bridge sways and creaks. Just FYI, you are crossing one of the longest hanging bridges in Europe. You made it through. Whew. The surrounding woods are terrifying, and several deserted attractions start popping up along the way. The forest has taken this twirling swing set. This huge slide would probably break if you tried to use it now. The park is in terrible condition. No wonder they closed it down due to security reasons. Best to leave it now and come back in the daylight. Your next stop is Wonderland Eurasia, also known as Anka Park in Turkey. The theme park opened in March 2019 but closed shortly after. Once inside the gigantic complex, you stumble upon what looks like an empty warehouse but ends up being an indoor roller coaster. Everything was left intact and is as good as new. You even take a quick sit on one of the roller coaster carts, perfectly lined up for the next ride. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can walk on the rails of the indoor coaster. Just be careful not to fall down. Oh, over there are the Flintstones. It's almost like a childhood deja vu here in the youngsters section of the park. On the horizon, you see what looks like the Jurassic World and decide to check it out. There are neglected statues of huge T-Rexes and fake skeletons of dinosaurs lying across the floor. Unlike the other derelict parks, everything here is new, which makes it all the more strange. Nara Dreamland was meant to be Japan's Disney World, but the project failed over time. Today, it's inhabited by moist ivies and strange birds. To get in, you'll pass a drawbridge and head into a pastel-colored castle. Your heart might beat faster than usual when you pass a fog-covered roller coaster. Was that meant to be the Matterhorn? Yup. Everything about this place says you shouldn't be there. Tossed on the park's floor, you'll see reels of tickets and misconfigured stuffed animals. How about walking into an empty diner? It's bizarre how the tables and stools are still in place. Strolling through what was once a gift shop, you'll see empty shelves and an old-school cash machine. I'd say you better leave before anything comes out of here. Now, if I say Joyland, what do you imagine? The name says it all, right? But if you decide to visit Joyland today, I bet you'll have a very chilling time. Down in Wichita, Kansas, you'll find a once famous but now empty theme park filled with eerie sights. A pale blue slide in the middle of a forest? Check. Empty warehouses straight out of a horror movie? Check. A wacky shack that looks truly wacky? You bet. But if you visit it on a good sunny day, I'd say the park is weird but still has some beauty. Joyland was built in the late 1940s. It carries a vintage aura that goes well with the neglected atmosphere. Hey, look at this rusty yellow Ferris wheel with a stripped ticket box in front. I dare say it's almost charming. The Magic Harbor Amusement Park is not that magical after all. Just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you'll find an old theme park left to nature. Here, bumper cars are not bumping anymore. If you get into a hedge maze, you'll probably never find your way out of it. I'm not sure what you'll see running around amongst the rusty rides, so good luck if you're planning a visit. If you're looking for somewhere to cool down on a hot and sunny afternoon, how about Disney's River Country? Just kidding. You're definitely not going to want to get in the water there. The park was built in the 1970s and closed in 2001. Pay a visit to the Whitewater Rapids on foot instead of floating down the fake river. You'll have about 330 feet to stroll along a very bumpy pathway. Maybe you'll see hanging tires that served as swing sets out in the bay. You can even try zip lining if you trust the cable. To add a little more creepy to this story, the park was closed down due to a dangerous bacteria that thrived in warm bodies of water. Are you sure you don't fancy a swim? When you think Italy, I bet you think pasta and pizza, and a leaning tower somewhere. Well, in the south of Italy sits the empty Miragica amusement park. The entrance still says welcome, but people stopped coming a few years ago. The site is covered in grass everywhere. The toy-like architecture is still there. Beneath the forgotten rails of an open-air roller coaster, you can almost hear the screams of excitement of people on the ride. This part of the park is usually prohibited, but there's no one around to control that now. It might be scary to be here, but adrenaline sure is running high. This next theme park is vacant only during a certain time of the year, but it still gives the true heebie-jeebie vibes. You have to catch a train from the city and travel to the end of the line till you reach the park. Coney Island is a seasonal park, open only from the middle of spring to the middle of fall. If you want to catch its unnerving vibe, you have to visit in winter. Then, you'd walk through the rows of empty stalls with the fairy string lights still hanging above your head. It looks frozen in time as all the rides lay shut down. Speaking of which, sometimes it gets frozen for real. Under many inches of snow, Coney Island is a little less disturbing. Then again, snow does have that effect on landscapes, but the park is empty and deserted nonetheless. I bet it's a great photo op. Now, be sure to tell me in the comments which abandoned amusement park you found the creepiest. Hey, you know me, I won't be checking any of these out. I'll let you go first. You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches cracking under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kinda looks like a concrete structure of some sort. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep in the woods and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's actually a 12-foot tall staircase and it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing there in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years and the only thing left is this staircase. But weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay. You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. You can't explain the feeling or take your eyes off the creepy staircase. You take out your phone and snap some pictures. Then, after a lot of hesitation, you take a few steps closer and notice that the stairs don't seem to be all that ancient, a few decades old at best. There's moss growing out from some cracks. Your friends have had enough. They ditch you and run back off to the trail, leaving you alone on the staircase. You put your foot carefully on the first step. Wham! Adrenaline rush. As you ascend to the top, someone touches your shoulder. You jump and turn around. All you see is black. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases illogically found in the woods are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others are bricks or stones. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. A long medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that led to a tiny platform at the top. Why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some experts think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. Some of the more modern staircases found in the woods also have an added bonus. They come with their own urban legends. Gee, would that be a 2-story or 3-story staircase? One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkik allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog that forced him further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village. Only thing was, he had been missing for 5 years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency. They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later, it reappeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece. The wood from the staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this staircase was built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind you. You turn around, probably one of your friends snuck up on you or something. But then you realize there was no one behind you. You're the only one around. You freak out. Something is definitely wrong here. So you rush down the stairs and bolt back to your friends, panting and startled. You start to tell your friends what happened, but they don't believe you. They think you're just trying to scare them even more. But the emotion on your face, it looks legit. There's real panic in your eyes, the kind you just can't fake. Shadow or wind or whatever that thing was, your fear's real. You all agree that you should stay away from the stairs, and it's probably best if you go back home, right now. I guess camping out there overnight just wasn't meant to be. As soon as you get home, you open your phone and check out your gallery. But no, you scroll through photo after photo. The staircase, it isn't there. None of the pictures have any staircases in them. Just a small, flat clearing with nothing but trees around, no weird shadows, nothing. Your friends have the same experience. Your eye twitches and you look over your left shoulder. You're in the safety of your own home, but you suddenly feel the same presence you felt on that staircase. Oh no! Everything goes black. But you can relax. Most of these stories are just urban legends, told to give you the heebie-jeebies. The internet has a way of spreading rumors faster than the speed of light. Most of these stairs might have even been built on purpose just recently. One weekend woodshop project, a couple of photos, and you too could be a sensation on every urban legend website. Then you just tear it down, take a photo to show it magically disappeared, and just like that, you're an internet superstar. But let's say you find some real stairs on your weekend camping trip. They're most likely the remnants from an old house or a cabin that got demolished or just collapsed after it was abandoned. Hey, it's 2021. There's a logical explanation for just about everything these days. That presence you felt was most likely your own mind playing tricks on you. When you see something in real life that looks like something you saw on a website or scary movie, your mind starts to work overtime, and you can actually see something or feel something that's not even there. That's what some people say happens when you get hypnotized. You want to see something so bad, and you do. That's probably what happened. Or was it?
The SCP Foundation is a secret organization that has one goal: to secure, contain, and protect the world from bizarre creatures and objects. The secret bases of this organization are hidden all over the world, and each of them contains scary, dangerous, harmless, miraculous, and simply crazy objects. And now, you'll see some of the weirdest. Object SCP-410. This is a colony of 14 individual beetles, similar to Scarabaeus of different colors, from light blue to dark emerald. At first glance, they look like ordinary insects, but soon you notice that these bugs don't feed on leaves, larvae, and other food. They eat mistakes in a text.
What?
Put a paper with some text containing spelling or grammar mistakes and syntactic errors inside the terrarium with object SCP-410. The bugs run up to misspelled words or punctuation errors and eat them. 20 minutes later, the beetles secrete corrected letters or words from their bodies. This way, they completely edit the text. One member of SCP-410 can eat about 25,000 errors per day. The beetles can live without incorrect texts for about 2 days. Then they fall into a state of hibernation. To revive them, you need to put a text containing at least 50 errors next to them. Object SCP-2157 is a mysterious 200 square foot piece of land found in a forest in Japan. People are standing in different poses on this territory. 20 men and 21 women. They're all of different weights and heights. Their feet are on the ground, and their faces are turned to the west. People react to external stimuli. They blink, flinch, and get scared. And still, they're standing there, motionless like trees. They start screaming if somebody tries to lift them off the ground. But soil analysis has shown that SCP-2157 objects have no physical connection to the land. Their feet are in no way connected to the soil. A body scan has shown some earth inside their stomach. As soon as an SCP Foundation employee enters their territory, the people turn their heads in their direction and just stare at them. As soon as the outsider leaves, the people start looking to the west again. Monitoring of this object continues. Object SCP-621. It's hypnotic tulips. They look like ordinary tulips, but have bioluminescence. They get energy and other nutrients from the water and glow purple, blue, or green. This glow has a hypnotic effect on people and all nearby living beings. Bees, for example, start pollinating only these flowers, ignoring all other plants, which speeds up the reproduction of the tulips. Herbivores and other natural enemies avoid SCP-621. All this makes tulips a rapidly spreading species. While growing, SCP-621 takes all the nutrients from other plants growing nearby. It depletes the soil and consumes a lot of water. Under the influence of SCP-621, a person tends to take care of the plants and do everything to make them live as long as possible. For example, owners of large fields only take care of the tulips and ignore the rest of their farmlands under the influence of the glow.
Oh God, oh God.
Thus, tulips can spread until they capture all territories, and people will treat them with love because of their hypnotic effect. Therefore, it's crucial to keep tulips in an isolated greenhouse. Employees of the SCP Foundation water them every day and don't allow them to get out of the area. Object SCP-2559-J. While conducting research in one of the laboratories, A scientist accidentally opened a portal to another dimension. Little kittens began to come out of this portal in an endless stream. There's an infinitely huge world of kittens on the other side. If you pick up one of them, it will turn out to be an ordinary little kitty. The portal is located deep underground. It's not yet known how to close it. As a person approaches the doorway, they find themselves under the influence of cute kittens. Now, they're falling out into our reality at a rate of 3 kittens per second. SCP-999 is a large moving mass of transparent orange slime. It looks like jelly and has the viscosity of peanut butter. The shape and size of the creature are constantly changing. The object's surface is covered with a thin, flexible membrane that prevents the mass from spreading in different directions. It's a friendly creature that likes to play with people.
So cute.
It jumps on a person, hugs them, and makes gurgling sounds. SCP-999 emits a pleasant and constantly changing odor. It can be the smell of bacon, or fresh bedding, or roses. Touching SCP-999 causes euphoria that increases with the duration of contact. After that, a person experiences happiness for a long time. The object likes to completely envelop people and tickle them from head to heels. Object SCP-831 is a colony of unknown insects, similar in appearance and properties to ordinary termites. They feed on cellulose and water with sucrose. One termite lives from 25 to 40 days. The colony should remain in an empty, bright room under constant supervision. The walls and floor in the room should be made of high-strength steel. Employees should pour water with nutrients on the floor to maintain the life of these termites. You can only enter the room in a protective suit. When the termites get access to any object, they begin to use it to make the most primitive tools. For example, if you put a pencil in a room, termites will extract graphite and use the wooden body to create chips or something else. If you constantly feed it, the colony will grow and multiply. It will use primitive tools to create modern technologies. These termites know the properties of all substances and understand how to use them to create inventions. With the help of knowledge of the laws of physics and chemistry, and using wood and graphite from the pencil, in a few days, termites can create a primitive steam engine. The longer they stay in some place, and the more they multiply, the more perfect the inventions will be.
Oh, yeah.
A colony of millions of termites can create high-tech machines or radio transmitters that are incomprehensible to people. The boundaries of inventions are unknown, but the results of their work surpass all human technologies. This is why SCP Foundation employees keep SCP-831 in an enclosed, empty room. Object SCP-1689. It's a big bag of potatoes. In stable condition, it weighs about 110 pounds. There are about 200 tubers of ordinary potatoes inside. The inner space of the bag is much larger than it looks from the outside. The size of this area is unknown, but it's completely filled with potatoes. It's impossible to determine where the bag ends.
Oh my god.
SCP Foundation employees once went on an expedition inside the bag. Scientists created a special paste that broke down starch and turned potatoes into liquid slush. This way, the employees made a tunnel for themselves by spraying the substance and raking potato muck with shovels. That's when they found out that the space had a concrete floor, concrete walls, and a ceiling. They were walking inside some kind of building filled with potatoes. The team punched a hole in the wall and left the construction. The ground was covered with dried grass. There were only potatoes around. What was at the top was unknown, since the entire space was filled with potatoes. They also found a rusty bicycle there. The expedition failed. SCP-1689 leads to a world similar to ours, but something happened there, and it began to fill up with potatoes. Object SCP-623. This is a small room built in the 60s by a professor of biochemistry. There are only these items in the room: one blue sofa, one red sofa, one green sofa, one white plastic chair, one round table decorated in the same colors as the sofas, 7 chairs around the round table, and 7 multicolored lighting fixtures. All the furniture is nailed to the floor. Strange patterns are painted on the walls. They perfectly match the style and the location of the furniture. The acoustics and the appearance of the room, as well as the arrangements of all the objects, have a strong, pleasant effect on a person.
Oh, yes.
Inside the room, people feel harmony and happiness. They relax and become kind and harmless. Because of the feeling of peace and serenity, people can't take the furniture out of the room. They just want to dance, laugh, hug the table, lie on the floor, and cry with joy. But as soon as they leave the room, they immediately become angry, aggressive, and sad. The real world outside the room seems to be a dangerous and dark place. If you stay inside the object for more than a few minutes and then go out, you can lose your mind.
This may sound mind-boggling, but scientists found a 385-million-year-old root network. Yeah, it's like a fossilized web of roots that's got them all excited. They're reimagining what the world's first forest might have looked like, and let me tell you, it's not what you'd expect. Under an old highway department quarry near Cairo, New York, they found the remains of a mighty and mature old-growth forest. This place was home to at least 3 of the world's earliest tree-like plants, but these plants, in fact, looked nothing like trees. One of them looked like giant stalks of celery. The second type resembled pine trees with hairy fern-like fronds for leaves. And the third plant was like a palm tree with a bulbous base and fern-like branches. It's like they couldn't decide what they wanted to be when they grew up. But here's the kicker. These primordial trees were quite old and large, so they weren't packed densely together. They were relatively scattered across a floodplain that ebbed and flowed with the seasons. And even though dry periods were a regular part of the cycle, these tree-like plants thrived in semi-arid conditions. Their roots had adapted to the possibility of short-term flooding, which is confusing because they're not supposed to survive in those conditions. But wait, it gets even weirder. Other trees in the area came more prepared for bouts of water scarcity. There were extinct pine tree-like plants with deeper root systems that could spread 36 feet wide and 23 feet deep. These guys were more advanced than the fern-like trees and had true leaves that could photosynthesize. It's like they were showing off or something. So why did the fern-like trees dominate prehistoric deltas, while the pine-like trees dominated the floodplains? It's like they didn't even care about setting up near rivers or water sources that could carry their genes farther afield. Maybe they were just rebels without a cause, doing their own thing and not caring what anyone else thought. In any case, this finding has got evolutionary ecologists all excited. They're saying that the earliest trees could colonize a range of environments and weren't limited to wet areas. Who knew trees were so versatile?
Are you used to picking up hitchhikers on your long commute to work? You might want to hear about the hitchhiker road scam. This trick preys on unsuspecting drivers. The scam typically starts with a person posing as a hitchhiker who flags down a car on the side of the road. They may claim to be stranded or in need of a ride to a nearby town or city. In some cases, the hitchhiker may ask the driver to pull over at a specific location, such as a gas station or convenience store, where they will then disappear with the driver's money or other valuables. This scam can also be done in groups, where a bunch of people will flag down a car and ask for a ride, and once the car is on the move, they will threaten the driver and steal money, valuables, or even the car itself. It's important to be aware of this scam and to always be cautious when picking up hitchhikers. It's best to avoid giving money or other valuables to anyone who claims to need a ride, and to never pull over at a location that is not safe or familiar. Hitchhikers are not the only reason why you might get into trouble on the road. A slice of cheese isn't something you'd expect to find on your parked car, am I right? Well, it might indicate something quite dangerous. One woman told the story of such an experience online, thinking it was just a prank made by some neighborhood youngster. She decided to call a friend and ask for help with cleaning the car up. But once the two ladies started rubbing off the melted cheese from her windshield, they saw something strange nearby. She remembered seeing a white van arriving. In it were a bunch of men, suspiciously staring at them. She wasn't alone, so she decided it was safe enough to finish cleaning up the car, even though they didn't feel comfortable being stared at. It took them almost an hour to scrape off the cheese that had melted under the heat. She did wonder, though, if this wasn't a tactic to rob a person. That's because most people would be so focused on cleaning up the mess on their car, they'd be distracted from keeping an eye on the thing they left in the car, like bags, wallets, or even recent shopping items. Or worse, what if it was a kidnapping strategy? That sticky cheese would keep a person really concentrated on fixing the car, so they wouldn't be able to see suspicious people coming at them in due course. The key takeaway from this story: if you ever see a piece of cheese on your car, might as well leave it as it is, as long as it's not blocking your view and it doesn't really affect your driving. Your safest bet is to just clean it at home, or take it to the nearest car wash. They'll know the best way to clean up the vehicle without ruining the paint. Sure, the piece of cheese on a car scam might just be a coincidence, but some scams out there are more legitimate, with this next one being quite the unusual method when it comes to snatching away other people's cars. If you notice a t-shirt or a hoodie on your windshield, or even wrapped between your wiper blades, don't be so quick to take it away. Again, it can be placed there on purpose to distract you while your car gets taken away. Drive away as quickly as possible if you can, and get to a safe location that's well lit and filled with many people. There you can remove whatever object you have on the car without any risks. Some people have even found money under their wiper blades. It's easy to imagine that those who left it there probably had the same intention in mind. There are methods to help when it comes to decreasing your odds of getting your car snatched away. Keep your tires turned to the curb whenever you park it. If your car wheels are in that position, thieves are less likely to be able to move around with the vehicle. They'll see that your car requires more time and energy to be moved, so it'll become less of a target. Sadly, scams on the road are quite common, and one of the most widespread types is the infamous tow truck scam. This scam involves leaving oil, metal nails, or glass shards on the road and waiting for drivers to fall into the trap. If your car gets damaged in such a situation, the scammers will suddenly appear out of nowhere and offer to provide towing service at extremely high prices. They'll try to pressure you into using their services because most of the time, they place these traps in strategic locations. They make sure people get stranded where there's low visibility and no gas station in sight where you can assess the damage done to your car. In a situation where you have no other option but to give consent for them to tow your car, they'll also take advantage of the situation and take it to workshops unapproved by your insurance company. This means you'll have to pay even more money to get your car back. If you've been a driver for long enough, you know that the driver who rear-ends another vehicle is always at fault. That's because you should always keep a comfortable distance from the car in front of you, so you can safely stop the car in case of an emergency. Some scammers will take advantage of this by repeatedly braking suddenly, causing you to hit them. This dangerous tactic is used to get money for supposed damages, and even for make-believe medical expenses. To avoid falling victim to this scam, you should reduce your speed and keep a safe distance, especially from suspicious vehicles or chaotic drivers. If a scammer continues to bother you in traffic, the best course of action is to drive to the nearest police station and report them. Picture this. You're driving on the road, and suddenly a motorcyclist gets your attention and points out that your wheels are smoking. You quickly pull over to the side of the road. The motorcyclist then offers to help by calling a mechanic to check your wheels. Surprisingly, the mechanic gets there really fast, but proceeds to disable your braking system while inspecting the cause of the smoke. He then asks you to test your brakes, which of course won't be working since he's already disabled them. Pretending to be helpful, he offers to fix your brakes for you, but will charge an enormous price for it. Moral of the story, stick to your trusted mechanic or towing company. You never know who you'll find on the road. Some scams aren't even that. They're just urban legends. Many people claim to have seen the wrong way man on the roads. One version of this story mentions a man stuck driving down one-way streets in the opposite direction, causing chaos and confusion as other drivers try to avoid him. The man is said to be crazed and dangerous, with a wild look in his eyes and a penchant for reckless driving. Other stories say he's not even driving, but that once you've seen this mysterious person on the side of the road while driving home, you should turn around to keep from going back to your house for at least a week. That is, if you don't want anything bad to happen. There are countless stories of near misses and close calls with this mysterious figure. Some even say that they've been hit by the man and that they suffered serious injuries as a result. Despite the many sightings and stories, there's no concrete evidence to suggest that the wrong way man actually exists. Many experts believe that the legend is simply a cautionary tale, meant to remind people to be aware of their surroundings and to drive safely. However, the legend persists and continues to be passed down through generations, making it one of the most enduring urban myths of all time.
All right, Freddy Krueger lovers, this story is for you. Imagine the scene. You go to bed after a long, busy day, but in the middle of the night, your peaceful dream gets interrupted by an unexpected guest, and he looks like this. You've never seen this strange face before. He says something nice to you, or maybe he begins to threaten and even chase you all over the place. Also, he might just stare at you in silence with a mysterious Mona Lisa smile. You wake up the next morning. Phew, thank goodness it was just a dream. You scroll down your feed and suddenly, the very same face is looking back at you from the screen. Is that even possible? Well, yes and no. This man is an urban legend that has haunted many people's dreams in recent decades. According to the story, he first started appearing in dreams in the 1980s, and the first sketch of his face was created in a New York mental clinic in the winter of 2006. One patient of a well-known psychiatrist drew a portrait that eventually went viral. According to her, this man has been repeatedly appearing in her dreams, although she's never seen him in the waking world. And unlike Freddy, he acted pretty friendly and even offered her some advice on her private life. Soon after that, another patient noticed the portrait on the doctor's desk. He recognized that face and claimed to be dreaming of him regularly too. The second patient has never seen this man beyond the dream world either. The psychiatrist found this case curious and showed the portrait to some of his colleagues. Multiple patients also recognized this face and said they'd been seeing this man frequently in their own dreams. And from that time until today, thousands of alleged witnesses all over the globe reported the very same story in plenty of variations. A website creator from Italy, Andrea Natella, told the media that he first dreamt of this man in the winter of 2008. In his dream, he received a very specific message from this man who told him to create a website dedicated to solving the mystery of his appearance. According to Natella, he decided to follow this instruction and made an online platform aimed at collecting stories shared by dreamers all over the world. The website gained a lot of attention and soon became a viral sensation. Some people posted funny and cute stories. For example, this man appeared in a dream as a father figure, giving wise fortune cookie advice. Or as a romantic partner with gifts and flowers, taking the dreamer on a fancy date. One of the witnesses claimed to have dreamt about this man being a school teacher from Brazil with 6 fingers on his right hand. But others reported experiencing some creepy nightmares that made them wake up shaking and sweating. There's little information about the voice of this mysterious guy, perhaps because it's typically harder for the human brain to remember sounds from dreams compared to pictures. However, there are some common trends in this man's message, such as telling dreamers to go north. Of course, thousands of people tried to find an actual living human that looks exactly like this man. They sent Natella many letters with different guesses, from ordinary people from the block to celebrities. Some suggested movie characters like the man from another place from Twin Peaks. English composer Andrew Lloyd Webber also joined the list, and even an Indian guru named Arud Kanan Aya. But despite the variety of wild guesses and funny memes, the original This Man was never found. Over the years, many brave minds tried to crack this mystery, which was getting more and more viral, and multiple theories popped up. Let's take a look at some of them. Remember the iconic dream surfer played by Leonardo DiCaprio? Well, the first theory is kinda similar to the famous movie plot. It suggests that this man is a real person who can enter people's dreams using some secret psychological skills. Unfortunately, this theory has the lowest scientific credibility, which isn't surprising. Unmasking is the last thing that dream surfers need, right? While some believed that this man is a superhero who shows his actual life face, others thought he looked completely different in the waking world. Meanwhile, more pessimistic individuals suspected a global brainwashing experiment going on behind those innocent, fluffy eyebrows. But since the dream space is one of the most poorly explored territories, it's pretty hard to get solid evidence to support any of these ideas. Another popular explanation is based on Carl Jung's psychoanalytical theory. It suggests that this man is an archetypal image from the collective unconscious. It visits the dreamer to point at particularly sensitive subjects and helps release psychic power to cope with hard times. Some take mysticism to the next level and associate this man with the universal consciousness. Those who adhere to this theory believe that their creator takes this specific form to communicate through their dreams. That's why the orders they receive from him must be followed undoubtedly. Pretty scary, huh? Science offers a simpler explanation, though. This theory is a mix of psychology and sociology. It claims that the whole "this man" phenomenon has arisen and developed thanks to imitation. People who come across the picture and his story get deeply impressed, and after that, they just begin seeing him in their dreams. In simple words, he only haunts those who make him a thing. And there's another curious explanation which is based on humans' tendency to forget faces from their dreams. Let's say you're dreaming of your favorite actor. Then he turns into your uncle. And then he smoothly takes the form of your yoga teacher, who you only met once 10 years ago. This character tells you something important or just leaves some specific emotional impression. You wake up in the morning still feeling this aftertaste, but you have no clue who exactly you were dreaming of. That's when the daytime recognition theory steps in. It claims that the brain uses this man's face to fill the void when the person is trying to remember the dream in a waking state. It chooses this particular face just because the dreamer remembers it more vividly. Okay, but this explanation only works for those who dreamt of this man after seeing his portrait. But what about those who didn't? Can the human brain actually create any new faces in dreams? According to science, the answer is no. Every individual you dream of has been someone you have either known or merely came across. Of course, you may dream of someone you barely recognize because you've seen them only once, but the brain remembers everything. It keeps a library of all the hundreds of thousands of faces that you see every day. So, according to science, this man is either your old friend or a system bug. As creepy as it sounds. Are you scared yet? Take it easy. In 2010, the website creator Andrea Natelli made a post where he confessed that the story of this man was just a prank. Nutella never verified whether this prank had a commercial purpose, but still, he managed to gain attention in Hollywood. A production company named Ghost House Pictures purchased this man's website domain, and in 2010, they announced plans to make a horror movie based on this epic viral trend. Their press release promised a story about a common man who discovers that people he has never met are seeing him in their dreams. And now he's on a mission to find out why he's the source of nightmares happening all over the globe. However, no further statements about the movie have ever since been made. Is it because of business calculations or this man's curse? I guess we'll never know. Prank or not, People to this day keep on sharing fresh stories about this man visiting them in their dreams. There are more urban legends about haunted dreams than you don't want to Google before bedtime. But for now, have a good night, my curious friends.
Behind those huge steel doors is one of the most guarded places on Earth. It's known as Site R, or the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. You'll find it in Pennsylvania. The construction is 60 stories underground and is said to be a safe place for people in case of a natural or human-made disaster. There's not a lot of information online about this mysterious place, but what we do know is that it's equipped with 38 communication systems. It's obviously not available for visits via Google Earth, but you can catch a quick glance at the 2 gates that face the complex. Vatican City is one of the most famous enclaves on Earth, and it's certainly worth a visit due to its wonderful architecture and vast list of art pieces to check out. One place, however, will always be off limits for visitors: the Vatican's secret archives. They have some of the oldest and rarest books on Earth. These archives are available only to a limited number of people, and since they have been visited by a small number of people so far, they also trigger a lot of weird theories. For example, that there may be books proving there's life outside our planet. If you're fascinated by shipwrecks, you'll be interested to know that one of the largest wrecks you can see on Google Earth is on North Sentinel Island, India. It used to be called the SS Jassim. It was a Bolivian ferry that sank in the area back in 2003. The reason why people can't visit it physically isn't because of the ship itself, but because the island is home to the world's most dangerous tribe. We don't really know how many people live there, but it was estimated that between 50 to 400 people call this place home. And they really don't like tourists. No person that tried to reach them survived. Also, to protect them, their privacy, and their special status, the island is closely monitored by the Indian authorities. That's mostly because it's believed the locals don't have any immunity to modern diseases. So being in contact with foreigners might be dangerous for the tribe's people, since they've never seen the outer world. A huge pink bunny appeared seemingly out of nowhere in the Italian Coleto Fava Mountains back in 2005. Besides the locals, some people stumbled upon it online too. They were puzzled by the discovery. Unfortunately, that 200-foot-tall bunny is completely gone today. You can still find the images of it online though. The unusual object was designed by artists from Vienna. They encouraged tourists to climb, jump, or even take a nap on top of the large rabbit. The whole purpose of the project was to allow people to experience what it would be like to live as smaller creatures. The bunny didn't have any removal date at the time it was placed there and was expected to last at least until 2025. But Mother Nature had other plans. A Japanese artist decided to move back to her little home village named Nagoro. But she soon found out that most of her neighbors were moving to bigger cities. To deal with loneliness, she started putting together scarecrow-like dolls, or kakashi, and placing them all over her garden. She didn't stop there though. The artist soon began doing the same with many other places in her village, creating dolls and placing them as if they were taking part in various human activities. These dolls keep moving around too, but the woman likes to stay true to her story and insists she doesn't touch them. You can see the images of this quirky village on Google Maps. This weird portal was discovered via online maps in New Baltimore, New York. It gave people all sorts of bad dreams. With spooky-looking buildings and all sorts of blurry figures, this area soon became a source for many weird internet theories. Turns out it was nothing more than a technical issue, which resulted in those images being rendered in a distorted manner. Either way, if you look for these images on Google, you won't be able to unsee them. This cute miniature world map was created by an artist from Denmark. He continuously worked on this tedious project from 1944 until 1967, using mostly his hands and just a few tools for moving heavy rocks around. He gathered stones at the edge of the water, then recreated the map of the world on the surface of this lake. During the winter, he was able to use a sled to transport larger pieces of rock over the ice and then place them in the perfect position. Apart from the continents themselves, the map also features rivers and lakes, as well as some other famous landmarks. Care to have a look at a sea without any coasts? Search for the Sargasso Sea. You'll find it in the northern Atlantic Ocean. This weird sea is surrounded by 4 ocean currents and no dry land at all. It got its name from the seaweed that grows there, sargassum. Fingerprints on the lens of a satellite camera? You may be tricked into thinking this if you search for the Finger Maze. It's located in the city of Brighton, UK, and is a large fingerprint created in Hove Park. It also has a maze at the center. It can be really hard and time-consuming to look for wild animals on Google Earth, but the Geo browser does have a nice feature that can help if you're eager to see hippos and flamingos in their natural habitat. Try Googling animals from above and start scrolling through these images. This unique feature can take you from Kenya to Namibia and even all the way to Antarctica, where you can see emperor penguins. There are some places on Google Maps that, for specific reasons, aren't available for the online public, like the Royal Palace in Amsterdam. If you head over there via Google Earth, you'll see that everything around the Dutch Royal Palace is still visible, like the vegetation and roads, but the construction itself is blurred from all angles. That's probably because local authorities want to keep the unique views of the palace for the eyes of physical visitors only. The same goes for the Tantaco National Park in Chile. This one is a privately owned nature reserve that can only be seen on Google Maps from a distance. Once you reach a certain point, the zoom feature stops working. Some people say that since it's a nature preserve, it may be home to some endangered species, and extreme measures are taken for their protection. You know how a certain brand of fried chicken has a certain kernel on their logo? Yeah, you won't see any of these logos in high resolution on Google Maps. That's because the online map uses specific algorithms to detect people's faces and blur them out. As you can see, it's not always really that accurate. It's called Snake Island, and the Brazilian authorities prohibit people from visiting it. For good reason. You'll find the island near the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil. It's said to be home to over 4,000 snakes. Some of the most venomous types of reptiles on Earth call this place home. If that's not creepy enough, how about that some of them are so dangerous that a small drop of their venom can permanently damage the human skin? You can see the shape of the island on Google Earth, but the more you zoom in, the blurrier it becomes. Here's another cool thing you can do on Google Earth: time travel. Well, at least sort of. You won't be able to travel back in time and tell yourself to study more for that tricky exam, but you can see certain historical images of places you like. You can check if this feature works by looking at the upper left corner of the screen. If you can see a small icon with a clock, it may allow you to scroll some years back, but you can also see how sunlight affects Earth if you turn on the sunlight feature.
Have you ever wondered how cool buildings of the future are going to look? Well, hold on tight, because artificial intelligence is here to revolutionize the world of architecture. AI is a great sidekick. It can give the architects incredible new tools to create mind-blowing structures that are not only stunning, but also eco-friendly and super efficient. So let's check what our beautiful future might look like. First of all, you know how cities can get crazy busy and overwhelming, right? Well, guess what? AI is here to save the day and make our cities super smart. Imagine you're cruising down the road in your flying car. Yes, we'll have those. Thanks to AI, the traffic flows like a dream. No more endless gridlock. The city knows where the most likely crime spots are and takes proactive steps to keep us safe. It's like having superheroes on every corner. And hey, forget about trash piling up. AI makes sure waste is managed efficiently, keeping our city clean and fresh. They can act as a city manager who can optimize everything from traffic to safety and even waste disposal. They can analyze tons of data from all sorts of places like sensors and social media. With all that information, they can help city planners make brilliant decisions that make our lives better. Okay, so you stroll down the street, and your eyes are instantly captivated by an extraordinary building. Its futuristic curves and features make it stand out from the rest. And it not only catches your eye, but also gives Mother Nature a high five. You might think it was designed by a genius architect, but little do you know it was actually a collaboration between humans and artificial intelligence. Imagine having a super smart design buddy who can whip up thousands of incredible building ideas in a blink of an eye. That's what AI-assisted design software does for architects. It can generate and assess a ton of design options. They take into account stuff like the best materials to use and the perfect placement for the building. Also, by analyzing data and crunching numbers, algorithms can help optimize the building's design. They can ensure it minimizes energy usage, conserves water, and manages waste like a pro. Every building strives to reduce costs, save energy, and promote a better world. The result? architectural masterpieces that are both jaw-droppingly beautiful and super practical. The cityscape of the future will be dotted with these awe-inspiring structures. Oh, but that wasn't impressive enough for you? Well, how about a stunning, futuristic building that seems to defy gravity? It's not made of traditional bricks and mortar, oh no. This marvel was created using the powers of 3D printing. With the help of AI, architects designed every intricate detail and fed all the important data, like what materials to use and how the site conditions might affect the structure. AI algorithms worked their magic to optimize the design, making it both breathtakingly beautiful and rock solid. 3D printing is basically like having a magical machine that can create awesome structures straight out of a sci-fi movie, and AI jumps in to make sure these structures are not just pretty, but also strong. In the city of the future, 3D printing will become the ultimate architect's tool. It will allow them to create structures that were once impossible to build. From mind-bending shapes to intricate details, the possibilities are endless. But AI isn't just making buildings look great, it also makes them efficient and cozy. Let's say you step into a futuristic office building, and voila! The lights automatically adjust to match your mood, and the temperature is set perfectly for you. These futuristic buildings are capable of sensing and responding to their surroundings, just like you do. They control the lighting, keeping it just right for the time of day. They manage the temperature, so it's always cozy and comfortable. They even keep a watchful eye on security and fix small issues before they become big headaches. So, the smart building knows when people come and go, so it optimizes energy usage accordingly, saving the planet and some cash along the way. Now the cool thing is, all these aren't the only possibilities. How about turning skyscrapers into a vertical forest? Recently, an architect from India got super excited about the power of artificial intelligence. So, he decided to team up with an image bot called Midjourney to create a vision for the future. But instead of a dull, robotic world, they aimed for something spectacular. With text prompts like utopian technology and futuristic towers, the architect and AI got to work. Guess what? Midjourney didn't disappoint. It conjured up a world where buildings were covered in lush vertical forests and adorned with shapes inspired by nature. They wanted to create a sustainable future that harmonized with the environment. The architect, Manas Bhatia, is super positive about AI's potential. He doesn't see it as a threat to his job, but as a powerful tool for positive change. He envisions a future where architects and AI collaborate to make breathtaking designs. In his project, Bhatia even asked the AI to imagine symbiotic and hollowed structures, and it responded with pictures of apartments nestled within hollowed-out trees. Imagine a world where the building itself becomes a living, breathing part of nature. Well, Bhatia believes that nature should play a big role in architecture. He loves designing structures that embrace nature's beauty and functionality. From buildings built around trees to facades that regulate temperature, he's all about blending architecture with the natural world. With architects like Bhatia and the superpowers of AI, the future of cities is going to be amazing. So get ready to step into a world where nature and technology coexist in perfect harmony. It's a dream we can't wait to see come true. Or if you're not a big fan of trees, how about this? Skyscrapers that aren't made of solid bricks, but instead, they're inflatable wonders. Zumo, an architectural practice in Barcelona, used the magic of AI to bring these wobbly structures to life. These inflatable superstructures rise above future cities like illuminated balloons in the sky. Here's the best part. These inflatable buildings have sustainability superpowers. You can pump them up to towering heights, flatten them for easy transportation, and rebuild them wherever they're needed. Plus, they're powered by renewable energy, reducing their impact on the environment. Pretty cool, right? Phew. The future is zooming toward us like a rocket. Artificial intelligence can become the secret sauce that makes architects' work extra special. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. We need to use AI wisely and ethically. For now, we don't have to worry about machines replacing architects. Artificial intelligence still needs a human hand, or else we might end up with buildings that look like mashed up bananas or ice cream cones, unless that's your thing. In addition, humans have one important advantage. They, well, are humans. We need to keep in mind that artificial intelligence doesn't have emotional intelligence. It's a brainy genius, but it can't fully understand the feelings and vibes we humans crave in our spaces. So we must remember to infuse our designs with that human touch, those warm and fuzzy elements that make us go, "Ah, I feel right at home." And let's not forget that AI is still learning. It's basically just taking its first steps, and we need to be patient and give it time to grow. Rushing things too quickly could lead to wonky designs or buildings that look like a jumbled puzzle. This might look cool if you like avant-garde architecture, but for regular folk, no thanks. So, as the future unfolds at warp speed, let's embrace the wonders of AI in architecture. But let's also remember to balance its brilliance with our own human touch. Together, we can create a future where buildings are not just functional, but also filled with heart and soul. It's an adventure that's out of this world.
Welcome to Nome, a small town located in the south of Seward Peninsula on the west coast of Alaska. If you live here, I'll bet you say there's no place like Nome. Well, maybe not. It's cold and snowy here, and no roads connect this town with other settlements. And with the onset of night, locals have disappeared here without a trace. Perhaps that's why only 3,500 people live here. Well, let's investigate this case. People disappear in cities for assorted reasons, but it was Nome who attracted the attention of the public. From 1960 to 2004, some 24 people went missing there. That number is statistically too big for such a small population. People just didn't come home in the morning, and no one knew what had happened to them. All the locals in small towns like Nome know each other. There are almost no strangers here, as it's difficult to get to Nome. There are no roads and no ferry crossing. All roads from Nome break off and lead to beautiful natural landscapes unspoiled by human mammals. You can get there and back by plane. And this is not some passenger jet, but a small biplane. Another way to get there is by snowmobile. By the way, Nome is the ultimate point of the famous dog sled race, the Iditarod. Also, you can pay locals from neighboring villages and towns to bring you to Nome by motorboat.
But despite this, the town has become quite famous. The frequent disappearance of people finally got needed attention.
The whole world found out about Nome, and in 2009, Hollywood even made a movie about it. For a long time, no one could solve the mystery. The police had no clues, no witnesses, nothing. There are long, cold nights here in winter, and the air becomes so cold that a glass of water freezes in minutes. Snow can fall constantly. Therefore, if someone leaves the town at night, snow will sweep all traces away by the morning. Of course, people began to come up with their own theories. The most popular one was about someone who took people away by force. The police didn't find any evidence that some person could do it. So, if it's not a human, it could be some beast. And again, police found no evidence to support this version. After that, people started thinking that creatures from other planets caused these disappearances. Many locals were sure that the town was a popular destination for extraterrestrial spaceships. The plot of the Hollywood movie The Fourth Kind was based on this version. More time passed. Finally, the police and the FBI launched a large-scale investigation, and they uncovered the truth. They realized that the stories about missing people were exaggerated. The popularity of Nome and the constant talk about fantastic things made people believe in the reality of these versions. Now, let's assume that some of the appearances were made up. But still, many people are gone. What about them? The answer is bars and harsh weather. Entertainment venues are open at night. Some locals have fun, leave the bar, and go home. At this moment, a heavy snowstorm begins. Visibility drops to zero, and the strong wind knocks you down. This way, a person might simply get lost. And that's it. The truth turned out stranger than most versions. The Bermuda Triangle is a big area in the Atlantic Ocean, so the disappearance of ships and planes there seems not so surprising. But it's much creepier when it happens on a lake. Let's visit the Lake Michigan Triangle. It's located between Michigan and Wisconsin. For a couple of centuries, terrible things have been happening here. People put the same legends around this place as around the Bermuda Triangle. They reported unexplained phenomena and saw flying objects above the lake's surface. Some believe that the triangle is a time portal. Of course, no theories have been confirmed, but strange cases have occurred on the triangle territory. One happened in 1950 when a Northwest Airlines plane with 108 passengers disappeared without a trace during a flight over the lake. Police officers saw a red light over the lake 2 hours after the plane's last communication. The aircraft probably crashed, but rescuers didn't find any passengers or wreckage. All that's left was just an oil stain on the water. Many ships and boats disappeared there, but one of the strangest cases occurred on April 28, 1937. It was midnight. One ship was sailing through this lake. Captain George Donner went to sleep in his cabin after a hard day's work. 3 hours later, the vessel was approaching the port. One of the crew members went to the captain's cabin to wake him up. The door was locked from the inside. The assistant knocked, but no one answered. When he suspected that something had happened to the captain, the assistant unlocked the door. He got into the cabin, but there was no captain there. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air. The crew couldn't find him. Since then, the eerie disappearance of Captain George Donner remains unexplained. Meet David Paulides. In 2008, he finished his career as a police officer and began to study the mysterious disappearance of people in Europe, the USA, and Canada. He found out that most people went missing in the U.S. national parks. Over the past 150 years, more than 1,100 tourists have vanished there. Many of them were experienced travelers who knew how to survive in harsh wild conditions. David has written about these mysterious vanishings. He pointed out that some of them didn't disappear, but were found alive. They woke up somewhere in the forest and didn't remember what had happened to them. The creepy detail of all these cases is that most missing persons were young. Another detail is that many went missing before hurricanes. There are too many riddles and not enough answers in this case. Then there's the Sargasso Sea in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. This is the only sea that doesn't have shores on land. It's called the sea only because it's defined by ocean currents. Also, golden brown algae grow in this area's bottom, making it seem like an orange spot in the middle of the endless ocean. The Sargasso Sea became famous because, in the 19th century, one of the most famous phantom ships in history sailed here. In 1872, a brigantine sailed through the Sargasso Sea. Its captain spotted another ship a few miles away. He lit a signal fire, but received no response. Then the captain decided to sail closer to find out what had happened. On the hull of the mysterious ship was the name Mary Celeste. The captain of the brigantine and several crew members went on board. They walked around the deck and looked into the cabins and the hold. Everything was in place, but there were no people. The cargo and barrels remained untouched, so pirates didn't attack the vessel. The only damaged thing on the ship were the sails. They were torn to shreds. All documents except the logbook were missing from the navigator's cabin. The last logbook entry was added on November 24, 1872. The crew of the ship was never found, and this was one of many cases. In the 20th century, from the 60s to the 80s, there were many reports of empty boats and yachts floating on the sea. Also, some entire ships disappeared without a trace. All these cases still remain a mystery. According to one version, the four-sided current forms water funnels. Whirlpools can quickly pull a ship into the depths of the sea. This explains the disappearance of boats. But what about cases when the vessel is still on the water without a crew? Sometimes these whirlpools can create wind vortices. They're like little tornadoes. What if these whirlwinds are powerful enough to throw people overboard and tear the sails? Yeah, the theory seems too fantastic. So, what do you think happened? So, imagine you're 15 and you get bored of playing video games. Instead, to pass the time, you decide to give some attention to an old hobby of yours, tracking down lost Mayan cities. You've heard that some ancient civilizations are said to have built entire cities based on constellations, so you decide to check out whether that was true for the Mayans. You find a book containing all the constellations the Mayan civilization believed to exist. You open good old Google Maps and map every ancient Mayan city discovered to date. You start seeing that this information actually matches. And truly, the biggest ancient Mayan cities correspond to the brightest and biggest stars of the Mayan constellations. Okay, this is getting interesting. You manage to map out over 100 ancient cities when you suddenly notice something strange. There's an area in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico where archaeologists have unearthed 2 Mayan cities. But on the constellation map, there are 3 stars. Could this mean there is a long-lost city waiting to be discovered nearby? You might think this sounds too daydreaming, but the story is actually true. The previous account happened to a Canadian teenager named William Gaddery. The boy is known as a science genius and had even won an award for the constellation theory we presented just now. When he noticed that a 3rd city was missing from the 23rd constellation he was examining, he began to scour the internet for satellite pictures that could help him solve this mystery. He looked into images from NASA, JAXA, a Japan-based satellite company, and Google Earth. These images were still insufficient to answer his questions, so he reached out to a friend inside the Canadian Space Agency. His friend provided him with state-of-the-art satellite imagery that gave him the answer he was looking for. According to the images, there is a large square area right on the border of Mexico and Belize, which looks like the remains of a city. William took the images to a remote sensing expert known as Dr. Armand Larocque from the University of New Brunswick. They studied the images thoroughly and concluded that the area could be housing 30 buildings and even a large pyramid. The scientific and archaeological community went crazy with the 15-year-old's discovery. Could this really be true? Some background. Lost Mayan cities began to be unearthed in the mid-20th century. Since then, ruins from cities such as Tikal, Palenque, and Uxmal have been rediscovered. The Mayans were one of the biggest pre-Columbian civilizations living in the Americas. They began to settle in the area as early as 1500 BCE. Experts believe that, at its height, the Mayan civilization consisted of over 40 cities, with a population of millions of people. That's a crowd. And their cities were pretty interesting. Their civilization spanned over Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. They survived mainly on agriculture, so they developed a complex irrigation system in most of their cities. They built a series of ceremonial buildings, pyramids, plazas, and even courts for ball games. The Mayans were keen pyramid builders, but they also developed an advanced astronomical system. With whatever ancient technology they had, they were able to predict the exact location of planets, such as Venus and Mars, and they were able to predict the exact dates of eclipses. That's why the methodology William used to discover this long-lost Mayan city was unusual, but not completely surreal. The Mayans were keen astronomers, so it wouldn't be too strange that they built their major architectural feats in relation to the sky, would it? And they wouldn't be the first ones to be doing so. There is a famous fringe of Egyptology dedicated to studying how the Giza pyramids were built in perfect alignment with the Orion constellation, meaning that each pyramid was purposely built to align with one of the major stars of Orion's belt. According to William, he first had the idea to look at the Mayan constellations because he couldn't understand why the Mayans built their cities where they built them. Most major cities, such as Chichen Itza and Uxmal, aren't near any rivers or significant bodies of water. Instead, they're built on marginal lands and on top of mountains, which confused the 15-year-old. His next thought was that it might have something to do with astronomy. William named the new city he discovered Mouth of Fire, which is also my nickname, and he even won a merit award for his hard work. However, his theory was very much contested inside the archaeological community, and many Mayan experts worked to debunk William's findings. Some archaeologists say that constellation theories are too unscientific. Anthony Aveni, a renowned anthropologist and astronomer, referred to Williams' methodology as an act of creative imagination. He explained that there is no way to be sure what the Mayan constellations really were. It's all just hypothetical. Another debunking of Williams' findings came from Mayanist David Stewart, who said that the object identified on the satellite imagery is nothing but an old cornfield. His claim was supported by an expedition that took place near the area in 2021, when the archaeologists present reported there was nothing at all in this area. Still, a 15-year-old boy almost found a long-lost Mayan city, which is pretty exciting if you ask me. Similar techniques as those used by William are actually being used to unearth lost civilizations all over the world. According to space archaeologist Sarah Parquet, satellite imagery has been a key player in discovering ancient cities in Egypt and other places. Sarah herself spends most of her days scouring images for any sign of where there could have been cities long ago. What happens, she says, is that any time you have something buried, it's going to be covered either by vegetation, soil or sand, or some other modern construction on top of it. In order to assess whether there is something hidden under large canopies of vegetation or not, she uses infrared technology, for instance. A major recent discovery in Brazil was done in a similar way. Satellite imagery detected a network of trenches dating back to 200 to 1200 CE. These suggest settlements that could have supported around 60,000 people. But in this case, the satellite imagery did indeed correspond to what was on the ground. Researchers from the University of Florida found several mounds that were accompanied by ditches and geoglyphs. Archaeologists also found remnants of carefully designed walls, centered around plazas, much like the type of construction done by the ancient Mayans. Advances in satellite tech have also shed new light on long-discovered ancient Mayan cities, such as Tikal. Located in the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, Tikal is believed to have been the capital of the ancient Mayan Empire. At its height, it was comparable in importance to cities such as London or New York in today's world. It was composed of a series of complex monuments, many of them believed to have been the resting places of kings and chiefs. Tikal is already known to have been big, but recent discoveries show it could have been even 3 times larger than what scientists originally believed. The main discovery revolves around a fortification on the outskirts of the city, indicating how far the original city stretched. And new discoveries still take place. In 2017, researchers also unearthed new clues regarding the potential causes of the decline of the Mayan civilization. Using data from a site in Sewell, located 62 miles southwest of Tikal, scientists analyzed radiocarbon data from ceramics and archaeological excavations to extract new information about the sudden demise of this great civilization. The information shows that, instead of a sudden collapse, the Mayans most likely collapsed in waves of social instability and political crises. These events are believed to have deteriorated Mayan city centers and began causing the dispersion of the Mayan population. Well, it seems like it's a prime time to uncover ancient ruins. What do you say? Will you give it a try as well?
Imagine discovering an ancient city without leaving the comfort of your home. In 1963, a man in the Nevşehir province of Turkey did exactly that. He was renovating his house. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found a mysterious room. He continued digging and saw a tunnel. This is how Derinkuyu underground city was found. Derinkuyu is one of the deepest multi-level underground settlements of Cappadocia and in all of Turkey. This engineering masterpiece has 8 levels. The inhabitants living on those floors had access to cellars, storage areas, chapels, a school, a study room, and other structures. All floors are connected by an extensive network of tunnels. It's believed that the underground city was built as a shelter. You can't see the construction from the outside. Its depth is approximately 279 feet. The complex was large enough to shelter about 20,000 people, plus their livestock and food supplies. There's also a 180-foot ventilation shaft. People used it both for ventilation and as a well. The well supplied water both to the villagers living on the surface and to those hiding in the underground city. Interestingly, those living on the bottom levels were able to cut off the water supply for the upper and ground levels. This kept the water safe from potential poisoning. The place was designed for protection. The tunnels could be blocked from the inside with huge round rolling stone doors. The passageways were extremely narrow. Potential invaders had to enter the tunnels one at a time. Seems like they thought of everything in the 7th century BCE. Archaeologists believed the Phrygians were the ones who first built the levels. After them, the structure was used and enhanced in Roman times. This was when the chapels were added. The golden time of Derinkuyu, however, was during the Byzantine era. But how did these people manage to create such tunnels? Well, the rock they carved them into wasn't usual. It was soft volcanic rock. It appeared due to a geological process that began millions of years ago. Volcanic eruptions covered the area in thick ash. It then solidified into this soft rock. When the natural forces of wind and water eroded softer parts, only hard elements remained. Fun fact, fairy chimneys are also made of intricately shaped volcanic soft rock, but they formed naturally without any human intervention. I'm still in Turkey, but this time, my destination is Çanakkale, where a myth came to life. For 3,000 years, people believed that Homer's Iliad was fiction and that Troy never existed. In 1863, everything changed. Expatriate Frank Calvert discovered ancient ruins in western Turkey. He was convinced they belonged to the ancient city of Troy. Heinrich Schliemann examined this area in 1868. That's when Troy saw sunlight again after all those centuries. Troy has complex layers. Over the years, 9 ancient cities were built on top of one another. Historians say that the area was strategically located between Europe and Asia, so it became a prosperous trade and cultural center. This strategic position made Troy attractive throughout history. After the Trojan conflict, the city was abandoned between the years 1100 to 700 BCE. Then Greek settlers rediscovered the area, and Alexander the Great ruled there. The Romans then invaded the city. Speaking of this event, the first thing you would see when visiting the site is a replica of the wooden Trojan horse from a movie shot in 2004. The next stop is Lothal. In the 1950s, Lothal and several other Harappan sites were discovered in India. These new provinces extended the boundaries of the Indus Valley civilization. Lothal was an important part of the Harappan civilization. It had vast cotton and rice fields. Plus, it had a bead-making factory. Beads were made from semi-precious stones, like agate. Many of these beads were later found in Mesopotamia, which serves as evidence that Lothal was a thriving trading port. Archaeologists believe that the city was part of an ancient trade route. Traces of agriculture? Check. Traces of trade? Check. What else? The remains of residential buildings, streets, bathing pavements, and drains. Some real city planning, and impressive examples of early urbanization. The town was well constructed. There were modern houses. Some of them had 6 rooms, bathrooms, a large courtyard, and even a veranda. Lothal also had the world's oldest known dock. It linked the city with the Sabarmati River and the trade route. The ancient Mayan city of Calakmul is located in southern Mexico in the tropical forest of the Tierras Bajas. From 500 CE to 800 CE, Calakmul was home to over 50,000 people. There was a central plaza surrounded by outer districts. And if we count both the inhabitants of all those outer areas and those who lived in the center, Calakmul had a population of more than 1.5 million people. It was a city that was habitable for 12 centuries. It's believed that the place had more constructions than any other excavated Maya settlements in the region. After 1000 CE, the Maya civilization there faced a downfall. The settlement that was once the center of Mesoamerica was almost completely abandoned. The ancient city was at the heart of the second largest tropical forest in America. The site is well preserved, so today, if you were to visit it, you would be able to picture what life looked like in ancient Mayan times. The city remains include architectural complexes and sculpted monuments, defensive systems, quarries, water management features, agricultural terraces, massive temple pyramids, and palaces, not to mention a variety of body ornaments and other accompanying objects. It proves that complex state-organized societies lived in this tropical forest. The Mayans depicted nature in their paintings, pottery, sculptures, rituals, and even food. I'm moving on to a place people thought didn't really exist. The city of Thonis Heraklion appeared only in a few inscriptions and ancient texts. Turns out, it was waiting to be discovered for thousands of years. Scientists searched the majority of the coast of Egypt. But then, archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team detected a colossal face looking at them from under the water. The ancient city of Heraklion was discovered completely submerged 4 miles off Alexandria's coast. In the ruins of the lost city, there were 64 ships, 700 anchors, and a treasure trove of gold coins. Archaeologists consider a 16-foot tall statue and the temple remains the most important findings discovered by the expedition. Back then, the city had ceremonies and celebrations that took place in the Temple of Amun. The ruins and artifacts were made from granite and diorite, so they were in good condition even after having been in contact with water for centuries. They give people a glimpse into what life was like 2,300 years ago in one of the most important trade ports of the world. The city had a network of canals. You can think of it as an ancient Egyptian Venice. The canals linked many separate harbors and anchorages. Towers, temples, houses, and other structures were also linked by bridges. Thonis Heraklion was the country's main port for international trade and the collection of taxes. No one really knows how the city ended up submerged, but archaeologists connect it with natural causes. At the end of the 2nd century BCE, most probably after a flood, Heraklion got covered with water. Then, Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander the Great, became more glorious than Heraklion. Before Alexandria's fame, Heraklion was the main port of entry to Egypt. So, after the disaster, many ships heading for Heraklion had to change their route and go to Alexandria. Heraklion lost its glory until its rediscovery in 1933. Mesa Verde is an American national park in Colorado. The park is the largest archaeological preserve in the U.S., with more than 5,000 sites, including 600 cliff dwellings. Mesa Verde means green table in Spanish. The name comes from the shape of the mountains in the area, with flat tops and steep sides. The park is an ancestral Puebloan archaeological site. Starting from 7500 BCE, a group of nomadic Paleo-Indians seasonally lived in Mesa Verde. They were hunters, gatherers, and crop farmers. They built the first pueblos in the region. By the end of the 12th century, the Mesa Verdeans began constructing massive cliff dwellings, which are now the best-known structures in the park.
See this place on the map? Yeah, right there. It's estimated that around 100 people have vanished or lost their lives here. Why, you ask? Well, it seems they were all looking for this guy, Percy Fawcett. He was a British colonel, famous for his sharp blue eyes, perfectly groomed beard, and signature hat. He looked like a character from Pride and Prejudice, but lived more like Indiana Jones. In fact, this character was inspired by Fawcett's story. But his disappearance in 1925 was more macabre than any movie plot. Colonel Fawcett was bold. Not the ask your neighbor's Wi-Fi password kind of bold. I'm talking full-on, I don't care that much about my life bold. He used to be a soldier in Sri Lanka and even did a secret spy gig in Morocco, but he needed more. So in 1906, Fawcett started exploring parts of Brazil and Bolivia where no one had dared to go before. His mission was to create secret, mind-blowing maps. Okay, that doesn't sound too risky, but trust me, it was. If you want to explore the world nowadays, you just open Google Earth and, well, that's it. No danger, no adrenaline, just maybe 1 or 2 creepy street view photos. Ew. But we're talking about the beginning of the 20th century, when satellites, and this weird Google car, didn't exist. Back then, if you wanted to fill in the world map, you actually had to explore the land on foot. So that's how Colonel Fawcett ended up in South America. And he became famous for his expeditions to map out the wild Amazon. He was the first guy to record the locations of waterfalls in that region, for example. But then he got obsessed. Blame it on lack of sleep or whatever sketchy Amazon jungle juice he was sipping, but suddenly he was like, I'll bet there's an ancient advanced city hidden somewhere around here. Spoiler alert, there wasn't. But he was hooked on that idea. Hanging out with native Indians for so long convinced him that large groups could totally thrive in the middle of a massive rainforest. And of course, Fawcett loved a good old adventure story, especially the ones from the 16th and 17th centuries, written by European explorers. In those stories, adventurers claimed they had found huge settlements and fine roadways deep in the heart of Latin America. But Fawcett's all-time favorite story came from a manuscript written in 1753. Back then, adventurers were hunting for precious metals in Brazil when they stumbled upon a ruined city with monumental buildings, roads, and plazas. Oh, and every corner had a Roman-style spire. Naturally, the colonel was all in to find it. Too bad no one told him this manuscript is mostly considered a forgery. Yep, this story is as real as Snow White's. But then, things got weird. The settlement described in that manuscript was supposedly located in the northeast side of Brazil. But now, he's saying there's an advanced civilization in Mato Grosso, which is in a different part of the country. So he decided to name this new place the City of Z. Back in the 1920s, the colonel launched 2 separate expeditions to find it, but both trips failed as he faced terrible weather, fever, and of course, exhaustion. Now, tell me in the comments, what do you think Fawcett did after 2 failed expeditions? Option A, he quit. Option B, he called his mom. Option C, he tried again because he didn't get the memo that the universe is clearly saying stop. Well, of course, option C is the right answer. This is relentless Fawcett we're talking about. So, 3 years later, the colonel finally gathered enough cash to launch yet another expedition in search of the City of Z. All he needed was a crew of people crazy enough to join him. Famous and experienced explorers were begging to come along. But nope, Fawcett decided to take his son and his best buddy instead. In January 1925, this brave trio set off on their journey. They packed mosquito nets, canned food, and made a promise, we shall return. Another spoiler alert, they didn't. Uh-oh. The journey kicked off in New Jersey, and then they sailed all the way to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. There, they stopped to grab some pack animals, like horses, and hired a couple of local guides. Now they were ready to head to the city of Cuiabá. Now keep in mind the distances in Brazil are crazy huge. So this little journey was like traveling from Miami to Chicago on foot. 3 months later, they finally ventured into the jungle for the first time. And that's when the fun really began. The crew faced piranha-infested rivers, an endless maze of thick trees, and the worst part, bugs. The constant annoying zzz of a gazillion mosquitoes wouldn't let them sleep, and Fawcett's best friend's foot got huge from tick bites. But the colonel didn't have time to babysit his friend's princess foot. Oh no, he was too obsessed to take a break. In fact, at some point, he was so far ahead of his companions that he had to camp alone for a night. On May 29th, Fawcett finally came to his senses. There was no City of Z. But did he let that stop him? Not really. He unpacked their gear and sent the local guides back to Cuiabá. But before saying a final goodbye, he asked them to deliver a letter to his wife, saying something like, "Don't worry, hon, our son is well and getting stronger every day." Sure he was. Anyway, after this dramatic farewell, the trio set off into the bush alone. The darkness swallowed the thick forest, and then they were never seen again. Okay, that was intense, so let's fast forward. 2 years later, the newspapers were still speculating whether the trio could still be alive, and Fawcett became a legend, like Bigfoot, but less hairy. One guy said that the colonel had become one of the locals and was living his happily ever after in the jungle. Another guy said he was held prisoner by the Indians, but no one could confirm any of these sightings. It wasn't until 1928 that the British authorities finally thought better late than never and decided to look for Fawcett and his crew. By that time, they were sure their expedition had perished, but they still needed proof. And after days and days of surviving the jungle's worst nightmares, they found, well, nothing. But in a weird way, this mystery inspired more explorers to look for them. It's estimated that about 100 people have passed away in this process, and a few have followed in the explorers' footsteps by disappearing without a trace. So, what really happened to the expedition? Researchers have pointed their fingers at everything under the sun: parasitic infections, starvation, drowning, jaguar attacks, you name it. Some even say Fawcett dove headfirst into mysticism and started an occult community in the jungle. The Brazilian anthropologist Orlando Vilas-Boas was probably the one who got the closest to solving this case. Back in the 1950s, he was working with the Kalapalo Indians when they suddenly admitted to, getting rid of Fawcett. They even had bones to prove it. But it turns out a forensic analysis showed that the remains didn't belong to the colonel. So we're back to square one, and nobody knows, to this day, whatever the heck happened to them. Fawcett's quest, as we know it today, is based on some pretty questionable sources. But there is a possibility that he wasn't living in Delulu land after all. Recent discoveries suggest that his idea of a sophisticated jungle city wasn't just pure fantasy. In 2024, a massive ancient city was found in the Amazon, hidden beneath dense vegetation. Evidence suggests it was built around 2,500 years ago, and it was surprisingly advanced, featuring houses and plazas, all connected by an incredible network of roads and canals. But this city was in a forest in Ecuador, not Brazil. So who knows? Maybe the legendary city of Z is still out there. Ooh. Scientists have recently discovered Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages under a medieval castle in Italy. They followed a newly found 15th century sketch by the creator of the Mona Lisa and found one of the unexplored architectural wonders from the age of the Renaissance. Construction of the Sforza Castle started back in 1358, but it was destroyed about a century later during a local crisis. Then, in 1450, Francesco Sforza, the Duke of Milan, decided to rebuild it on the old ruins. After he passed away, his son Ludovico took over and kept improving the castle. He brought in some of the best artists of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci, to decorate its walls. We can still see Leonardo's frescoes today in the Room of Wooden Boards. While he was working at the castle, da Vinci also recorded some historical underground passages hidden beneath the outer wall. The drawing, dated between 1487 and 1490, was found at the Institut de France in Paris. The sketch is highly precise, and it proves that Leonardo was really interested in fortification design and was great at documenting existing structures. Historical records show that Ludovico ordered the building of an underground passageway that led straight to a basilica, where his wife was buried. Ludovico married Beatrice in 1491, and they had a happy but tragically short marriage, as Beatrice passed away while giving birth in 1497. The Duke locked himself away for weeks, grew a beard, and wore only black clothes while he was mourning his beloved wife. The secret tunnel may have stretched over a half a mile and would let Ludovico visit her grave in private. It could have served as an escape route if the castle was ever under siege. The existence of the tunnels remained one of the mysteries of the Renaissance for years, as no one knew for sure they were there. But now, scientists finally uncovered the secret history. They used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to build up an accurate 3D model of all the structures under the castle. They found the tunnels da Vinci alluded to in his drawings, and it looks like they may have only been a small part of a whole system of historical underground passages. The goal is to create a complete digital twin of the castle that will not only show all the preserved constructions, but also the ancient ones that are no longer visible. They also plan to add augmented reality to the virtual paths to let visitors discover Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages. Now, we don't know if the genius actually took part in constructing the hidden passages that scientists recently discovered, But we do know about some other Leonardo da Vinci inventions. He created the first satellite-like map in 1502, long before photography or satellites were even a concept. A famous figure in Italy, Cesare Borgia, invited Leonardo to a small town called Imola, near Bologna, to create a highly detailed map for him. Back then, maps were not very precise, as no one had figured out how to show exact distances on a smaller scale. Instead, people spent a lot of time decorating them with dragons, roses, fancy castles, mountain ranges, flowers, and other artistic details. These maps look more like beautiful paintings meant to be displayed, rather than practical tools for navigation. But Cesare Borgia wanted something truly functional, and Leonardo managed to create something revolutionary in the field of cartography. If you compare satellite images of Imola today with Leonardo's map, the similarities are striking. He captured every alley, curve of the streets, roadways, and even the exact sizes of the buildings. And he did it all by hand, using just a pencil, ruler, compass, and several of his own clever inventions. To gather all the necessary data, the genius walked through the streets for weeks using a large wheel that spun as he moved, recording the distance with a cable. Using the magnetic compass, he determined precise directions. He also developed a tool called the bussola, which measured angles inside a circle. With this, he could track the exact turns of each street and the size of the intersections. He figured out the distances between houses and major roads. Then, back at home, he used his notes and calculations to draw the map to scale with incredible precision. In his work, Da Vinci also used a technique developed by Florentine humanist Leon Battista Alberti. He created a mapping method where you could place an entire city inside a circle using polar coordinates. At the center of the city, 8 straight lines met, representing the main directions of a compass. Leonardo used this system to divide the town into 8 sections. He didn't overlook even the smallest buildings, which made his map one of the most advanced of its time. The Italian genius had a big dream to build a machine that could let people fly. He studied how birds, bats, and kites move through the air and designed a special flying machine. He believed that if he could copy their movements, humans might be able to soar like them. Da Vinci's design looked a lot like a bat, with 2 large pointed wings that stretched over 33 feet wide. He planned to build the frame from lightweight pine wood and cover it with raw silk to make it strong but not too heavy. The person flying it would lie on their stomach on a wooden board in the center. To make the wings flap, the pilot had to pedal a crank with their feet, which was connected to a system of rods and pulleys. There was also a hand crank for extra power and even a headpiece to help steer. As the person moved their hands and feet, the wings would flap and twist, just like a bird's. But there was one big problem. Humans aren't strong enough to make the machine lift off the ground. Even though it might have worked once in the air, there was no way for a person to get it flying on their own. Leonardo probably realized this, but his amazing idea still inspired flying machines that came centuries later. Da Vinci was way ahead of his time with many of his inventions, but his idea for a humanoid robot was especially futuristic. He was working under the patronage of the Sforza family, the one that had those ancient tunnels of Italy built. The genius designed a mechanical knight that could move its arms, turn its neck, and even open and close its mouth. Da Vinci had good knowledge of anatomy and the mechanics of body movements that helped him. His unusual creation used an external system of cables. A hand crank set it in motion, and there was also an internal gear-driven mechanism. About 450 years later, Da Vinci's detailed sketches of the robotic knight were rediscovered in the 1950s. Several researchers tried to recreate the robot from those sketches. In 2002, a roboticist who developed systems for NASA and Lockheed Martin took inspiration from the old notes and built a functioning model of Da Vinci's robotic knight. Another design Leonardo created for Duke Sforza was a special kind of bridge that could be taken apart and carried easily. It was made for defense forces who needed to cross rivers or moats while traveling. This bridge would swing across the water and land on the other side. It had wheels and used a rope and pulley system, so it could be set up quickly and packed away just as fast. To keep it steady, it even had a special weight to help balance it. Leonardo wrote in his notes that the bridge was light yet strong, and he designed several bridges like this for the Duke. One of his other designs was a bridge that could be built very quickly, and the defense forces would move across multiple rivers. As scientists continue to study Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages, they reveal new chapters in human